Hey guys, tonight we're travelling back to an era where going to the doctor was basically a dare. A time when you could walk into a healer's hut with a stomachache and come out missing an organ. Or not come out at all. This isn't your usual bedtime history. This one's going to make you appreciate modern medicine, even if you still hate the taste of cough syrup. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'm curious, what city are you watching from? And what time is it there right now? Drop it in the comments and let's see who's listening to this at the weirdest hour. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing in the heart of a medieval village, and you're sick. You're not even sure what's wrong, something between chills, fever, and a pain that snakes down your side when you move. In today's world, you'd hit up an urgent care, maybe get an x-ray, a couple of pills, and call it a day. But not here, not in this timeline. Here, you're about to meet the town barber-surgeon. Yes, barber as in cuts your hair, and surgeon as in cuts everything else. Same guy, same rusty tools. You're ushered into a cramped, candlelit room that smells like sweat, dried blood, and something vaguely herbal that might be lavender or spoiled ale. The barber-surgeon greets you with hands already stained brownish red, and an apron that has seen more bodily fluids than a battlefield. He doesn't ask your name, just what's hurting. You try to explain your symptoms, but he's already rummaging through a box of instruments that look more suited to carpentry than medicine. In the corner, there's a long wooden chair, high-backed and stained from decades of patience. You're told to sit. There's no examination table, no latex gloves, no reassuring posters explaining the human body, just that chair, the surgeon's eager hands, and a bucket on the floor in case you faint or vomit, or both. You sit, and the inspection begins. By inspection, we mean he squints at you like he's trying to remember if he's seen these symptoms in pigs. He nods gravely, then mumbles something about corrupted blood. That's your diagnosis. It's always corrupted blood, or humours, or demons, or the fact you didn't eat enough figs during Lent. His solution? Not medicine, not rest. He reaches for a slender blade and a metal bowl. Bloodletting. It's the first step in pretty much every medical plan of the era. You don't question it because you're not supposed to. The medical hierarchy is simple. The guy with the biggest knife knows what's best. The blade glints in the firelight. No gloves, no antiseptic, not even a clean rag. He slices into the crook of your arm like he's opening a bottle of wine. The blood drips steadily into the bowl. You feel lightheaded, but he looks pleased. "That's good," he says. "Too much blood in the liver." You wonder briefly how blood is in your liver, but you say nothing. You're too busy watching your life force drain into a bowl like it's soup night. Here's the reality check. He's sick. You probably won't survive this. Even if the bloodletting doesn't kill you, and it might, the tools aren't sterilised, so infection could finish what the knife started. Also, no one's checking if you're anemic, dehydrated, or bleeding from somewhere else. They don't have that kind of knowledge. Germ theory doesn't exist yet. Microbes are still centuries away from being blamed for anything. Right now, it's all about the balance of the four humours: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. You're basically a meat-based cocktail that needs stirring every so often. And the barber-surgeon? He's not trained. Not in the modern sense. He didn't go to med school. He learned from a guy who learned from another guy, who maybe once read part of a medical book written in Latin by someone who thought the stars caused stomach cramps. His credentials are literally the sharpness of his knives and his ability to not panic when things squirt. Quirky side fact. The reason barbers did surgery is because they were already skilled with sharp instruments and had the social status to perform lesser medical procedures. Pulling teeth, lancing boils, amputating toes, all that fun stuff was in their wheelhouse. The red and white barber pole we still see today. That's a leftover symbol of their trade. Red for blood, white for bandages. There's some scholarly debate about whether barber surgeons were helpful or harmful. Some argue they filled a critical role in communities without access to university-trained physicians. Others think they were just butchers with razors, winging it with every incision. The truth is probably somewhere in between. Desperate times made everyone a little more tolerant of desperation dressed up as healing. After a few minutes, the barber-surgeon decides enough blood has been spilled. He presses a rag to your arm and ties it off with twine. You're dizzy, cold, and your vision's a little blurry, but hey, you're done, right? Wrong. He says you'll need to come back tomorrow for more treatment. Maybe a purgative to clear the bowels. possibly some boiled herbs to soothe your spleen. Either way, you're walking home with an open wound and a head full of vague instructions you barely understand. You step out into the cobblestone streets, swaying like a drunk, bloodied rag tied around your arm like a makeshift badge of survival. You survived today. Maybe. You don't sleep well that night. Your arm aches where it was cut, and the cloth tied around it is stiff with dried blood. There's no such thing as antibiotics in your world, and that dull throb you feel now, that could be the start of an infection. But before you even have time to panic about your slowly rotting elbow, the sun rises, and you've got another appointment. Today's treatment? Leeches and more bloodletting, because apparently draining you once wasn't nearly enough. You drag yourself back to the barber-surgeon's hut, clutching your side and feeling even worse than yesterday. He nods when he sees you, as if to say, "You're still alive." Bold. The fire is already lit, his tools arranged neatly on the table beside him, but this time he doesn't reach for a blade right away. Instead, he brings out a small, water-filled bowl, and inside it, wriggling black thumb-sized creatures, leeches. You flinch because of course you do. Even in the 21st century, if someone whipped out a jar of leeches and told you it was medical, you'd back away slowly. But here in the 14th century, this is standard procedure. Leeches are believed to help balance your humours, especially when the surgeon wants to remove blood a little more gently. You're told they'll draw the bad stuff out. You're not told what the bad stuff is. No one knows, just that you have too much of it. The leeches are placed onto your skin with practiced ease. One on your neck, two on your chest, and another on the inside of your thigh. The moment they latch, it feels like a pinch, then a pull, then a burning sensation that spreads out in every direction, like something ancient is waking up inside your skin. You're told to sit still, because if you flinch, they might fall off and you'll have to start over. Great. Leech saliva, interestingly, contains anticoagulants that prevent your blood from clotting while they feed. Modern scientists would eventually isolate compounds from it that have medical applications, but right now in your world, no one's thinking about science. They just know you're bleeding again, and that must be good, right? While the leeches do their thing, the barber-surgeon checks your pulse by touching your wrist and squinting at your face. You hear him mutter about cold and moist humours. That means your energy is low, your spirit is weak, and your bodily fluids are doing something wrong. The solution? More bloodletting. Not the dramatic kind from yesterday. This time it's a small incision behind your ear, where he believes bad blood collects like rainwater in a ditch. And just to top things off, he brings over a strange reeking paste he insists will draw out the bad spirits. It's made of crushed garlic, animal fat, something that smells suspiciously like old fish. And, just your luck, a hint of crushed beetle shell. He smears it on the wound and ties another rag over it. You're pretty sure you'll never feel clean again. You sit there for what feels like hours, leeches fattening on your blood while you bleed gently from your head. You're dizzy again, your lips dry, your skin cold. You try to focus on anything else, maybe the uneven stones in the wall or the sound of the fire crackling. But your brain keeps drifting toward that terrifying question. Is this really helping? Scholars still debate the effectiveness of leech therapy. While some conditions, like certain blood clots, can benefit from leech saliva's anticoagulant properties, most medieval uses were wildly off base. People used them for fevers, headaches, gout, even jealousy. Yes, jealousy. The idea was that emotional imbalances were just another sign your humours were out of whack. A quirky side fact, leeches weren't cheap. The rich had their own leech jars, sometimes imported from exotic swamps, because apparently your social status extended to the quality of your parasites. Poorer folks had to rely on local marshes or shared supplies. Reused leeches were a thing, and yes, that's just as gross as it sounds. Eventually, the surgeon declares you sufficiently drained and dispirited. He plucks the leeches off your skin and drops them back in their little bowl, now full of red, sluggish water. You're bandaged again, roughly, and sent on your way with another recommendation. Boiled nettle tea, a cold compress made of cabbage leaves, and some good old-fashioned prayer. Because honestly, prayer might be doing the heavy lifting at this point. You walk home slowly, swaying with every step, your knees a little softer than usual. Your vision swims and your ears ring. You've got 3 new open wounds, a handful of bruises, and your chest looks like it was attacked by gothic jelly beans. No antibiotics, no antiseptics, just faith in the unseen, and the hope that your humours know what they're doing. The truth is, you're being systematically weakened by the very people trying to help you. Every pint of blood they remove takes away your body's ability to fight infection. Every open cut is a welcome mat for bacteria, and every visit ends with the same haunting refrain, "Come back tomorrow," and you will, because the alternative is lying in bed, sweating and hallucinating, waiting to die. At least the barber-surgeon looks like he knows what he's doing, even if he smells like old cheese and regret. So you drag yourself through the village again, past curious glances and the faint sound of a cow giving birth somewhere nearby. You reach your home, a crooked wooden shack with straw on the floor and a leaking roof. You collapse onto the pile of cloth you call a bed, wrap yourself in a wool blanket that smells faintly of goat, and wonder if you'll still be breathing when the sun rises again. You probably won't survive this. But hey, we've only just begun. Morning sunlight slips in through the cracks in the wall like it's trying not to wake you. But you're already up. Barely. You didn't sleep much. Your bandaged arm is stuck to the blanket, crusted over with dried blood and whatever was in that garlic beetle paste. The cut behind your ear itches in a way that suggests something might be growing. And your chest? That's a patchwork of tiny red dots from the leeches, a little like the world's worst case of acne with a medieval vengeance. Still you sit up, because you're still alive, and that means one thing in this world, more treatment. You stumble back to the surgeon's hut, but today he's out. Something about a broken leg in the next village over. So you're sent to the village healer, a woman named Maud who lives at the edge of the woods and smells like dried herbs and possibly goat urine. She's not a barber, she doesn't wear bloodstained aprons or carry bone saws. Instead she wears layers of scratchy wool and speaks mostly in mutters. Still the townspeople trust her, especially for skin issues, fevers, and anything involving uncomfortable boils. You explain your symptoms, fever, weakness, pain in your side. Maud nods slowly, reaching into a series of cloth bags and wooden bowls arranged on shelves. She pulls out a handful of crushed leaves, something dark and flaky, and what might be a piece of moss. She adds it all to a mortar and begins to grind it with a stone pestle like she's making pesto for a very specific dinner guest. Once the mix reaches a paste-like consistency, she walks over with the bowl and a small wooden spoon. You start to think you're supposed to eat it, but nope. She dips the spoon into the paste and slathers it onto your side right over the spot that's been aching. It's cold at first, then it starts to burn, then it really burns. You try not to scream, because Maud doesn't seem like the kind of woman who tolerates complaints. She tells you the poultice will draw out the badness. You ask what the badness is. She stares at you for a long second and says, "What's in you?" That's the end of the explanation. To hold it in place, she wraps a cloth around your torso and ties it with what looks like a shoelace made from sheep intestines. You're told not to take it off until it falls off on its own, which you sincerely hope happens before your skin does. As a final touch, she takes a small needle from the fire and gently pokes it into a large blister forming near your ribs. You yelp. She tuts and says something about how pain means it's working. Let's be clear. You are being medically burned. This is medieval topical treatment, also known as counter-irritation. The theory? Make the skin angry enough to fight something, and maybe the rest of the body will get the message. They thought it was therapeutic to cause small injuries to distract your body from the big injury. Your body is now a battlefield of diversions. This kind of practice, using herbal poultices and caustic substances, was extremely common. Most medical knowledge passed through oral tradition, especially among women, midwives and folk healers. And yes, some of the ingredients did have antibacterial or anti-inflammatory properties, things like garlic, honey and certain roots, but others, not so much. There were recipes involving dead mice, pig dung and even crushed emeralds if you were fancy and desperate. That's not science. That's just what happens when superstition, trial and error, and a whole lot of guesswork run the show. One quirky fact, some medieval texts actually advised using baked pigeon as a compress for inflamed body parts. You would roast a pigeon, split it open and slap it, still warm against the sore. Why? Warmth mostly. And because pigeon was apparently believed to draw illness into itself, kind of like a sacrificial chicken nugget. There's a scholarly debate about how effective these remedies were. Some historians argue that the herbalism practiced by these healers laid the groundwork for modern pharmacology. Others point out that most patients either died or got better by pure chance, and the treatments were often just rituals that gave people hope. Either way, your side now smells like fermented mint and charcoal and it still hurts. After Maud finishes her application, she hands you a small cloth bag. Inside, more herbs. You're supposed to boil them into a tea and drink it 3 times a day while reciting a charm. Not a prayer, a charm. The difference, a charm usually rhymes. Boil the root, burn the flame, sickness flee, health reclaim. That kind of thing. It's unclear if the rhyme helps, but you're not in a position to argue. You limp home, a little woozy, the poultice squishing against your ribs with each step. You're still bleeding lightly from yesterday's wounds. The leech bites are starting to scab over in uneven patterns, and now your skin is tingling in ways it definitely shouldn't. But what's the alternative? There is no second opinion. There's no clinic down the road, no specialist in town, no hotline to call. You get the treatment your village can offer, and you hope your body cooperates. That night you lie awake again. You can't sleep on your left side because of the poultice, and you can't sleep on your right side because your arm still feels like someone tried to drain it like a wineskin. You shift, groan, adjust, try not to cry. Outside an owl hoots. Somewhere in the distance a dog barks. Inside you try not to scratch the itchy parts of your blistered skin, because Maud warned you, if you touch it, it'll go deeper. The only comfort you have is the soft hum of wind outside and the warm weight of your wool blanket. You hug it to your chest, sweating, half delirious, whispering that ridiculous charm under your breath because, well, what else can you do? You wake to the sound of church bells tolling, slow and deliberate, like they're counting down the minutes of your life. Your mouth tastes like moss, your side is sticky, and the poultice Maud wrapped around you has fallen off during the night and hardened into something resembling tree bark. When you try to peel it away, your skin comes with it. Just a little, enough to make your stomach turn. Your fever hasn't broken. In fact, it feels worse. There's a hot ache in your bones now, like your skeleton is trying to boil itself. You know deep down that whatever's wrong inside you isn't being fixed by burned blisters or leech bites or rhyming tea. But no one in the village seems too worried. They've seen this before. You're either going to get better, or you're going to get worse. There is no stage 3 intervention, there is no MRI, there is only the next treatment. Today, you're taken to the learned physician. Not the barber-surgeon, not the village healer. This is the doctor, the guy with a degree. Sort of. He wears long, flowing robes and a hat that looks like a squashed mushroom. He carries a book so large it needs both hands, and when he walks, he makes a soft jingling sound thanks to a belt loaded with pouches, scrolls, and little glass bottles of something brown and suspiciously chunky. He greets you by barely looking up. You're led into a chamber that smells heavily of candle wax and musty old paper. There are scrolls stacked in the corners, an astrolabe on the table, and a small cat curled up next to a skull. Human, probably. The doctor waves you forward and begins his examination, not by touching you, but by asking questions. How long has the heat been in your chest? Is your stool dark or pale? Have you wept more than usual? Did you dream of snakes or drowning recently? It's less like a doctor's visit and more like a weird, intrusive therapy session, led by a man who looks like he'd get kicked out of a modern bookstore for loitering too hard. After your vague, fever-scrambled answers, he pulls out a scroll and starts muttering Latin phrases that may or may not be made up on the spot. Then comes the big reveal. Your humours are imbalanced. Shocker. Specifically, your black bile is overtaking your phlegm, which means, apparently, you're melancholic, depressed, weak and dry on the inside. His solution? You need to be purged. No, not like a juice cleanse. He means vomiting. He prepares a concoction that smells like pickled feet and makes you drink it on the spot. Within minutes, you're doubled over a wooden basin, heaving violently. The doctor nods in satisfaction, scribbling notes into a small book while you retch up your dignity. He mutters something about the liver pathways clearing as you wipe bile from your mouth with the sleeve of your own shirt. The four humours theory, the backbone of medieval medicine, is one of history's greatest exercises in confident nonsense. Developed in ancient Greece and adopted with full enthusiasm throughout medieval Europe, the belief was that your health depended on the balance of four bodily fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Each one was associated with certain elements, seasons, temperaments, even moral qualities. Too much yellow bile, you were choleric, angry and prone to fits. Too much black bile, depressed and slow. No one considered germs. No one knew about viruses. Disease was either internal imbalance or divine punishment. It gets better. Your personal diagnosis isn't complete without an astrology reading. That's right. Before deciding whether to bleed or purge you again, the doctor consults the stars. He unrolls a zodiac chart, checks the alignment of Venus and Mars, and determines that your spleen is particularly vulnerable this week. He won't touch it, but he's not ruling out blistering the soles of your feet to redirect the heat. You try to argue, but it's hard to have a reasoned discussion when you're dizzy from vomiting and you're not even sure you understand what the spleen does. The doctor tells you to lie flat on your back while he brews another mixture, this one involving something called ox gall and a few shavings of licorice root. He assures you it will stabilise your temperament. All you hear is ox. There's a scholarly debate about just how seriously these medieval doctors took astrology. Some physicians, especially in big cities or university settings, swore by it and wouldn't perform surgery if Mercury was in retrograde. Others used it more as a way to impress patients, or cover their butts when things went south. After all, if a patient died, you could always blame Saturn. It was the perfect scapegoat. While lying there, you notice a small collection of vials on the shelf. Some are labelled with Latin words you can't read, but one clearly says Tinctura de Serpente. You hope to every forgotten saint that it doesn't mean what it sounds like. The doctor notices you looking and smiles. That one's for cough, he says, made from the bile of a black snake, dried and powdered. Of course it is. When he finally allows you to stand, your legs wobble like wet parchment. You're given a final dose of something bitter, another stern instruction to avoid heat and cheese, and sent home again with a note to return next week, unless you're dead, in which case the doctor assures you he will adjust your treatment accordingly. You stagger back through the village, still tasting bile, and licorice and something earthy you can't name. A few people glance at you and nod. They've seen the look before, fever-glazed eyes, trembling hands, that sour smell of someone who's been bled, blistered, and purged, but somehow still vertical. You're now officially part of the walking wounded. At home, you collapse onto your pile of hay, every muscle twitching, every breath a hot flutter in your throat. You've lost more fluids in the past 3 days than a marathon runner in armour. Your stomach is empty, your head pounding, your body a mismatched jigsaw of ancient treatments and fresh agony. And still, no one has any idea what's actually wrong with you. You wake up gasping, your breath shallow, your mouth dry, like you've been chewing dust in your sleep. Your entire body feels like it's made of stone, hot, crumbling stone. You try to sit up, but your head tilts with the grace of a sack of potatoes, and the room blurs for a moment. Someone's moaning. It takes a few seconds to realise it's you. Outside, the world continues to creak and groan as usual. Chickens scratch in the dirt. Someone yells at a pig. But inside your hut, it's a personal apocalypse. That pain in your head? It's new, sharp, pulsing behind your eyes like something's trying to claw its way out. You wonder, in your daze, if this is what dying starts to feel like. You stagger back to the doctor's home, your 4th visit now, and this time he doesn't even bother with the tea or the purging or the poultices. He looks at you, sees the sweat, the trembling, the wild flickering of your eyes, and mutters something grim under his breath. Then he calls for his assistant. "You've got a demon in the head," he says casually, like you've caught a minor cold or a bout of hiccups. "The only solution is to release the pressure." You blink. Wait, what? That's when he brings out the saw. Trepanation. The ancient, terrifying, deeply unsettling horse cure for head pain, seizures, mental disturbances, or anything vaguely brain-related. The idea is simple. There's pressure in your skull, or worse, evil spirits, and the only way to fix it is to drill a hole into your head to let them out. Logical, right? You're laid down on a wooden bench and held firmly by 2 assistants. No one offers you wine this time, no poppy seeds, not even a stick to bite down on. Apparently, if you're conscious enough to scream, you're considered lucky. The saw isn't like a modern drill, it's not even close. It's more like a corkscrew had a baby with a torture device. The doctor positions it just above your temple, mutters a quick prayer to St. Dymphna, patron saint of the mentally afflicted, and begins to turn. At first, it's a pressure, then pain. Blinding, searing pain that shoots through your skull and down your spine like lightning in a metal pipe. You thrash, but the assistants tighten their grip. One of them starts humming. You're not sure if it's a song or just a way to drown you out. There's a faint cracking sound. Your vision explodes into white. You feel something wet trickle down the side of your face. Blood, probably. And maybe something thicker. Then all at once the pain sharpens and then dulls. You feel faint, light, like your soul's trying to climb out of the hole before your brain does. Trepanation wasn't invented in the Middle Ages, but it certainly thrived there. It had been practiced since prehistoric times, with ancient skulls showing clear signs of drilling and incredibly healing. In the medieval period, it was used mostly for head injuries, epilepsy and migraines, and of course demonic possession. Because naturally, if you heard voices, it couldn't be trauma or schizophrenia. It was Satan playing house. There's still debate among historians and medical anthropologists about how often this was done, and how often patients survived. Incredibly, some did. Bone shows regrowth around trepanation holes in ancient remains, meaning people lived for months or even years afterward. But not all. Many died from infection, shock, or simply bleeding out during the procedure. There's also a fringe theory that trepanation was occasionally elective. That's right, some people volunteered for it, believing it could enhance their mental clarity or allow greater spiritual connection. That's one way to say, I've made a huge mistake. Back in your current moment of agony, the doctor stops turning the saw. He leans in close and peers into the hole he's just carved into your head like he's checking the inside of a pie. Then he nods. No pus, he says. Good sign. You're too far gone to respond. Your arms are limp. Your mouth is moving, but no words come out. The assistants clean the wound, sort of, with a cloth dipped in vinegar, and then apply a paste made of wine, herbs, and ash. It stings like hell. Then they slap a bandage on it and tie it around your head like a crown of suffering. You're told to rest. The doctor assures you the worst is over, which feels a bit optimistic considering your skull is now aerated like a loaf of sourdough. He recommends no loud noises and plenty of rest, as if you were planning to attend a jousting tournament in this condition. They help you home, dragging more than guiding, and you collapse onto your hay pile once more. Your head feels wrong, like it's empty but also stuffed, both hollow and heavy. Breathing hurts, thinking hurts, existing hurts. Later, in a brief moment of lucidity, you wonder what the logic was behind it all. Is your pain gone? Not really. Is your fever broken? Definitely not. But the doctor seemed pleased. You didn't die on the table, which counts as a win. Here's the real kicker. If you do survive this, the town might consider you touched. You'd be someone who's been drilled open, who lived, who possibly had their inner darkness released. People might whisper about you. They might avoid you. Or worse, they might come to you when they get sick, hoping whatever magic healed you will rub off on them. Congratulations, you're now folklore material. You lie awake again that night, barely able to move, staring up at the rafters, listening to the wind outside and the occasional rat scuttling beneath your straw mattress. There's a hum in your ears that won't go away. Maybe it's just your brain trying to reboot. Or maybe it's the part of your soul that escaped and forgot to shut the door on its way out. You don't dream, not really, you drift. You float in a kind of oily soup of nausea, head pressure, and distant chanting. Though you can't tell if that last part is from the neighbours or just happening inside your skull. By the time morning comes, you've gone from death feels near to death sounds pretty reasonable. You blink into the half-light and run your fingers gently over your bandaged temple. It's warm, very warm. Not a great sign. Someone brings you broth. It's thin, salty, and has bits floating in it that you decide not to identify. You slurp it down anyway, grateful for something other than bile or mystery herbma. And after a little while, your vision stops swimming. You can sit up, you can even form full sentences again. Kind of. This is progress. But before you can even appreciate it, someone's already at your door. It's your neighbour, old Elfrida. Her face is a topographical map of wrinkles and secrets. She clucks her tongue when she sees you and mutters something about needing proper healing. Apparently, Maud the healer is busy with a childbirth, and the doctor is off treating a monk with explosive bowels. That leaves you with option 3, holy intervention. You don't really have the strength to argue, so you're wrapped in a blanket, lifted into a wheelbarrow, yes, really, and carted down the dirt road toward the church. The priest meets you at the door, robes swishing, his expression stuck between solemn concern and mild revulsion. You're led inside, laid on a bench beneath the altar, and told to be still. The priest lights incense, sprinkles holy water in a wide circle around you, and begins a prayer in Latin. You can't catch much of it, except something about unclean spirits and restoration of the flesh. He presses a wooden cross against your forehead, right over the barely healed trepanation site. It throbs in protest. He continues to chant, his voice rising and falling like waves in a choppy sea, while a boy swings the incense burner in wide, smoky arcs that make your stomach churn. Then, just as you start to doze, the priest says he's going to anoint you with a sacred poultice. You're thinking, finally, something not made from dead frogs or unwashed nettles. But the poultice in question is less than divine. It's a mixture of wax, lamb fat, and what he claims is holy soil from a pilgrimage site, which honestly just looks like muddy compost with ideas above its station. He spreads it across your chest, murmuring a string of blessings that are clearly supposed to purify you from the inside out. Welcome to the intersection of religion and medicine, medieval edition. When science couldn't explain disease, and let's face it, it rarely could, people leaned heavily on faith. That meant holy relics, prayer, pilgrimages, and treatments blessed by priests. There were even sanctioned rituals to cure epilepsy, believed by many to be a form of demonic possession. If you twitched or screamed at night, no one asked about your mental health. They just brought a relic of St. Vitus and held you down while someone recited psalms over your twitching limbs. Quirky fact, some priests kept jars of saintly dust, literally the dirt from a supposed saint's grave. It was stirred into wine or food and given as medicine. Occasionally it worked, usually it didn't, but the placebo effect in the Middle Ages was basically its own branch of healthcare. Your priest, to his credit, doesn't push you into full exorcism territory, but he does give you a charm to wear around your neck. It's a tiny pouch made of stitched leather, containing a scrap of cloth from a monk's robe and a sliver of candle wax from Easter Mass. It's meant to ward off further illness. You're instructed not to remove it, not even to bathe. Though let's be honest, you weren't planning to bathe anyway. There's some scholarly debate over whether these spiritual remedies were ever effective. In cases of psychosomatic illness, those triggered by stress or emotional trauma, faith and ritual might have offered some genuine relief. But for bacterial infections, tumours, or organ failure, prayer alone wasn't going to cut it. Still, belief had its power. People wanted to feel cared for. They wanted structure in the chaos. If holy soil and whispered Latin could offer that, who were they to argue? You're wheeled back home with the charm around your neck, smelling faintly of incense and candle wax. Your body's still in rough shape, but your mind is clearer than it's been in days. Maybe it's the broth. Maybe it's the forced nap in a cold church. Or maybe deep down you needed someone to look at you with actual concern and say you are not forgotten, even if they also smeared you with grave dirt. That night you managed to sleep without hallucinating about snakes or whispering voices. Your head still aches, your side still burns, but your fever has lowered and your thoughts don't skitter like startled mice anymore. You can breathe without wincing, and that in your current reality feels like a miracle. Still, recovery is a relative term. You know you're not out of danger. Infection, relapse, or even a well-meaning follow-up treatment could end you just as easily. But for now, you lie in the flickering dark, fingering the charm at your chest, and wonder how much of your healing came from real medicine, and how much from the fact that you're just too stubborn to die. It's nearly a week before you notice the dull throb in your jaw. At first, you think it's a leftover ache from all the fever and gnashing of teeth during that whole let's drill your head open thing. But no, this is different. Sharper, deeper, and it comes with swelling. You prod the side of your face and wince as your fingertips land on something hot and angry beneath your skin. You pull down your jaw in front of the warped bit of polished metal you call a mirror, and there it is, red, swollen gums with one molar that's trying to escape your skull like it owes someone money. There's no avoiding it. You've got a toothache. And in medieval Europe, a toothache doesn't mean a quick trip to the dentist for a numbing shot and a root canal. It means pain, a lot of it, possibly in public. You drag yourself back to the market square where the barber-surgeon is working under the shade of a makeshift canvas awning. He's got a pig's head hanging on a hook, practice, he claimed, and he's sharpening a pair of iron pliers that look like they were stolen from a blacksmith's tool roll. There's a long bench nearby where another poor soul is already seated, bleeding from the mouth and clutching a soaked cloth to his chin. You nod in understanding, solidarity in suffering. When it's your turn, he doesn't even ask which tooth it is. He jabs a thick, soot-covered finger into your mouth, prods a few places until you scream, and then nods knowingly like, "Yep, that's the one." There's no sterilization, no numbing, no delay. He tells you to hold still, grabs the pliers, and wedges them into your mouth like he's trying to get a cork out of a very angry bottle. The pain is immediate, and it's personal. You feel the grating pressure of metal on bone, the snap of the root being twisted, and the hot zing of nerves firing off every alarm your body has. You flail and someone grabs your shoulders from behind. A man in a leather apron, probably here just to hold you down. The barber twists again, hard, and the tooth finally gives up the ghost with a wet crack that echoes through your skull. He drops it into a small wooden bowl with a clink, hands you a rag, and moves on to the next customer without another word. You're left stunned, dazed, and tasting blood like a copper coin is melting on your tongue. Your mouth throbs like a drumbeat from some pagan ritual, but hey, the tooth is out. Success? Sort of. Tooth extraction in medieval Europe was almost always a last resort, and often the only option. If your teeth hurt, you pulled them, simple as that. There were no fillings, no root canals, no fluoride treatments, and even if your problem was something as simple as gum inflammation or a cavity, it usually got yanked out because no one had the tools or knowledge to do anything more delicate. One fringe approach to dental care involved charms or superstitious rituals. Some people believed you could relieve a toothache by transferring the pain to an animal. One Germanic folk remedy involved whispering your pain into a frog's mouth and then releasing it into a river. Not exactly FDA approved. There's still debate among historians over who actually handled most dental problems in medieval villages. In cities you might find trained barber-surgeons who dabbled in tooth pulling. In rural areas, blacksmiths, midwives, or even travelling tinkers might take on the job. If you had strong hands and didn't flinch at screaming, you were qualified. After the extraction, you're given a strange-looking paste to apply to the gum. It's dark green and smells like mouldy vinegar sixed with rotten apples. You apply it anyway because the barber insists it will keep away the death. You're not exactly sure if he means infection or ghosts. Could go either way. You walk home like a drunk sailor, clutching your jaw and spitting blood into the dirt every few steps. No one stares, everyone's seen it before. You're just another unfortunate who had a tooth pulled without warning or grace, now shambling toward a night of open-mouthed groaning and pain-induced prayer. By nightfall, the pain is still raging, and the bleeding hasn't stopped completely. You suck on a cloth soaked in cold wine, which stings like fire, but numbs you just enough to let you lie still. Every so often your tongue brushes the ragged socket where the tooth used to be, and you shudder. The wound feels raw and permanent, like you lost a part of yourself that mattered, which, let's be honest, you did. Chewing won't be the same again. You curl up in your blanket, head turned gently to the side, jaw throbbing with every heartbeat. There's no ice, no antibiotics, just the hope that the infection doesn't move to your bloodstream while you sleep, because in medieval terms, that's a death sentence. And then there's the guilt. You can't help but think, what if this was preventable? What if you hadn't ignored the pain, hadn't waited so long to say something? But deep down, you know it wouldn't have mattered. Even if you'd caught it early, they would have still pulled it. Maybe with less blood, maybe with more screaming, but the ending would have been the same. A bowl full of teeth and a village full of people pretending that suffering is just part of the healing. You drift into a shallow sleep, half listening to your heartbeat in your swollen gums, your face pressed to a pillow that smells faintly of wood smoke and dried sweat. Somewhere outside a dog howls once, then goes quiet. You wonder if it's mourning something. You wonder if it's mourning you. Morning comes with the grace of a kick to the face. You barely slept. Your mouth now stiff and throbbing like a drum made of meat. The space where your tooth used to be has ballooned into something unholy, swollen, angry and tender to the touch. You'd scream, but it would probably make it worse. So you groan like a haunted wardrobe and rinse your mouth with cold water from a bucket that's seen better days. There's a little blood in it, maybe more than a little, but what's new? You shuffle outside, a blanket wrapped around your shoulders, and sit in the sun like a lizard. It helps, the warmth, the light, a moment of something that doesn't involve knives or ancient mysteries being pried from your skull. For once, no one rushes you back to the doctor or drags you to the chapel. But of course that brief peace doesn't last. Your cousin shows up, panting, eyes wide. "It's Edwin," she says. "He cut his foot. It's bad." You're still chewing on that sentence when you're pulled to your feet and led to his cottage on the edge of the woods. You can already smell it from the outside. Something rotten. Something wrong. Edwin's lying on a rough wooden bed, his foot wrapped in cloth so soaked with fluid it looks like a piece of raw meat. He stepped on a rusty nail 3 days ago, didn't think much of it, didn't even bleed much at the time. But now, his foot is swollen to twice its size, skin stretched tight and shiny. His toes are darkening, black even. And the smell? Putrid, like a compost pile that's been left to ferment in the sun. The barber-surgeon's already here, pacing, muttering, swishing at a small bottle of vinegar like it's going to help. "It's gone bad," he says eventually. "The rot's set in." The only option, of course, is amputation. You feel your stomach lurch. Edwin's still conscious. Barely. His eyes dart around the room like a trapped animal. The surgeon gives him a piece of leather to bite down on and ties him to the bed frame with rope. This is happening fast. You're barely given time to back away before the saw comes out. It's short, rusty, and brutally efficient. The surgeon gives no speech, no prayer, just a firm grip and a quick cut. One slice through the skin, then muscle, and finally bone. The sound it makes is somewhere between a crunch and a scream. You're not sure if it came from Edwin or the saw. He thrashes, he moans, then he goes limp. The stump bleeds freely, thick and dark, and the surgeon presses hot iron to it, cauterization, to sear the wound closed. The sizzle is horrifying. The smell is worse. It's burnt meat, blood, and something else. Fear, maybe, if that had a scent. When it's done, the stump is wrapped. Edwin is left to rest, and the foot is tossed into a bucket in the corner like garbage. You stumble outside, gagging into the dirt, eyes stinging. The whole thing took less than 15 minutes. There were no anaesthetics, no painkillers, just iron and willpower, and the thin hope that infection won't creep up the leg before the week is over. Medieval amputation was more common than you'd think, mostly because they had no other way to stop infection from spreading. If a limb turned black or started to stink, it was either saw it off or prepare the grave. Success rates varied wildly. Some patients lived, some bled out, others died of sepsis within days, but occasionally someone would survive, just enough for people to believe it was a legitimate option. Quirky fact, amputated limbs were sometimes buried in churchyards separately from the body, especially if the patient lived. There was a belief that all parts of the body needed to be reunited at resurrection, so theoretically your foot would be waiting for you in the afterlife like a forgotten suitcase. Scholars still argue about how skilled these surgeons really were. Some had years of experience and could take off a leg in under 2 minutes. Others were glorified butchers who caused more harm than good. But what they all shared was the pressure of urgency. There wasn't time for finesse when death was already knocking. Edwin survives the day. Barely. He doesn't speak, just lies there, breathing shallowly, eyes open but unfocused. The surgeon leaves behind a mix of dried herbs and a whispered recommendation. Keep the wound dry, feed him broth, and pray. Always pray. You nod as though you're not sure who's listening anymore. That night you lie awake again. This time it's not your own pain keeping you up. It's the memory of Edwin's face, the look in his eyes just before the saw hit, a mix of pleading and resignation. He knew what was coming. He just hoped it would be quick. Your own jaw still throbs. You can feel the pulse in your neck echoing through your gums. But compared to what you saw today, it feels distant, manageable, like a scratch instead of a sentence. You wonder if that's what survival really means in this world. Not thriving, not healing, but simply enduring the next disaster with enough strength left to witness the one after. Pain isn't the exception here. It's the atmosphere you breathe. The background music of your life. You turn over and pull the blanket tighter, hoping sleep will come without visions of sawdust and blood and the way a man can stop being a man when a part of him is thrown into a bucket. You pray for Edwin. You pray for yourself. But mostly you pray that no one steps on another nail tomorrow. You sleep finally, but it's the kind of sleep that doesn't rest you. It just steals hours and hands them to the darkness. You wake to crows arguing overhead, and your jaw still pulsing like a second heart. There's a taste in your mouth like copper and mould, and your breath smells like something crawled in and died halfway through the night. But you're upright, still here, and in medieval Europe, that's a win. The village is quieter today. Not peaceful, just waiting. You see fewer people out and about, fewer carts rattling along the lanes. No children chasing chickens, no gossiping old women. It's the sort of silence that hums just before something awful happens. That hum turns into a knot in your gut when a rider gallops through the square and yells a single word, "Plague!" You freeze. Everyone does. It's like someone shouted fire in a theatre, except there's nowhere to run. The word alone has weight, heavier than anything you've carried. A death sentence, a ghost, a punishment. And even if you're not coughing yet, you feel your throat tighten. You feel your hands itch. You feel the fear creeping in through your skin like frostbite. People start shouting. Doors slam, windows are shut and candles lit behind them. Some folks start packing what little they have, throwing bundles of linen onto carts and wagons and shouting about heading north or finding the hills. Others go straight to the chapel. A few collapse into the dirt and cry right there. You make your way toward the edge of town, but already the signs are showing. A boy vomiting behind a water barrel. A woman clutching her neck, eyes wide with dread. You spot a merchant's wife with dark swellings rising beneath her arms like bruises full of liquid. Buboes. The word rings in your head like a curse. You've heard the tales, everyone has. And then, as if summoned by sheer horror, he appears, the plague doctor. You spot him through the crowd, tall and stiff in his black robes, the unmistakable beaked mask staring straight ahead as he walks. He looks less like a healer and more like death's bureaucrat, here to observe, not prevent. The beak is stuffed with herbs, lavender, rosemary, maybe even mint, meant to block the miasma, or bad air, that was believed to carry the plague. It doesn't help, not really, but it smells nicer than death, and that's something. The doctor walks slowly, deliberately, carrying a cane to prod patients from a distance. No one touches him, no one dares. His mask is part bird, part ghost, part warning sign. You don't even know what his real face looks like. You probably never will. He stops near the fountain, crouches beside a man who's barely moving and listens, briefly, before nodding and scribbling something onto a small scroll. A boy takes the note and runs off. A few minutes later, two men arrive with a wooden cart. They lift the man in, gently but without much ceremony, and wheel him away. This is how the plague is handled now. No real cure, just containment and the cold arithmetic of survival. If someone gets sick, you isolate them. If they die, you burn their bedding and try not to think about how close they live to you. There's a cottage already being nailed shut. A family inside, no one talks about it, but you know what that means. They're sealing the door not to keep others out, but to keep the sickness in. The family watches from the window, pale and hollow-eyed. They nod silently, as if agreeing with their fate. You retreat back to your home, lock the door with a bar of wood and the single rusty latch you own, and press your back against it. Your breath comes in short bursts. The walls feel too close, the air feels too heavy. You pour yourself a cup of water from the bucket and gag on the taste. Everything tastes like dread now. Here's the historical truth. The Black Death hit Europe in waves, and each one left the population hollowed out like a loaf eaten from the inside. People didn't understand the disease. The prevailing theory was bad air, miasma, so they burned herbs, wore masks, and avoided the sick. Germ theory was still centuries away. No one knew it was fleas. No one knew it was rats. So they guessed. They blamed. The Jews, the heretics, the stars. Quirky fact. In some towns, doctors recommended strapping a live chicken to the swollen lymph nodes, believing the bird would absorb the poison. Others smeared victims with rose oil or wrapped them in vinegar-soaked linen. The only consistency was how little it helped. You sit down in the corner of your cottage, away from the door, away from the window. You hold the charm the priest gave you and wonder if it's strong enough to fend off a disease that melts people in days. You've survived the drill to the skull, the bloodletting, the purging, the tooth extraction. But this is something else. This is a horror that doesn't knock, it just slips through the cracks and finds you. And the debate, of course, remains. How much did these plague doctors really help? Were they brave souls risking their lives for the good of others? Or did their very presence spread panic and disease? Some say they kept order, helped collect data, managed quarantines. Others say they were little more than black-robed placeholders for real medicine that didn't exist yet. You try to breathe slow, steady. You try not to scratch your skin even though you know it's just your nerves. You try not to imagine what it would be like to feel the first lump rise beneath your arm. But that's the thing about fear in the Middle Ages. It's not a what if, it's a when. The sun sinks, the village is quieter than ever. Fires are lit indoors, bells toll slowly, methodically. One, then another, and you sit, in the dark, with your charm in one hand and a cup of stale water in the other, waiting to see which side of history you'll land on. You don't sleep much, not with the coughing. Not yours, at least not yet, but someone nearby, maybe across the road, maybe behind the next cottage. It cuts through the night like a jagged saw, wet and ragged, followed by silence that lasts just a bit too long, then another round. You try to convince yourself it's nothing, just a chest cold or someone choking on bad wine, but you already know that's a lie. When the sun creeps up, your body feels like it's made of damp wool. You move carefully, testing each joint, each breath, no swelling yet, no fever, just exhaustion clinging to your skin like soot. You force down a crust of bread, wash it down with the last of the water, and tell yourself it's just another day. Except now, every moment feels borrowed. Out in the village there's a new rule. The church bell tolls once every hour. If you hear it, you stay indoors. If it tolls twice, that means a cart is coming through to collect the dead. And 3 tolls, well, no one talks about 3, but you know what it means. You stay inside until the single toll fades, then open your door just wide enough to step outside. The air smells of smoke and vinegar. People are burning herbs in doorways, rosemary, thyme, and something else bitter. Bundles of them tied to window frames, dangling like shriveled wreaths. Some folks carry nosegays, little bunches of sweet-smelling flowers clutched beneath their noses. You do the same, though you can't smell much. The taste of rot has settled in the back of your throat and won't go away. Down by the river, the plague doctor is back. That mask, bird-like and staring, feels less like protection and more like a threat. A warning. He's watching 2 gravediggers shovel dirt over what used to be a baker's apprentice. You know him. Knew him. He used to whistle while kneading dough, even if his hands were always covered in flour and old blisters. Now he's a shape wrapped in burlap, being covered in layers of dirt like he never existed. The doctor makes a mark in his book. No one speaks to him. No one asks questions. He's become part of the landscape, like a storm cloud that never leaves. You turn away and walk the long way back through the village. Past the well, where no one draws water anymore. Past the empty market stalls, where dried fish hang like forgotten warnings. Past the cottage with the boarded-up windows, the family that stopped waving back 3 days ago. You wonder if they're still inside or just very, very still. When you reach your doorstep, you see it. A faint chalk mark, drawn on the lower half of your door, a small crude X. Your heart skips. You didn't put that there. No one told you, but now it's there. And it means the worst. Someone thinks you're sick. You stare at it for a long time. Was it a mistake? A prank? Or did someone hear you coughing in your sleep and decide to act preemptively? Either way, it's a mark of death now. People will avoid your house. The doctor might come, or worse, they might not. You step inside fast and pull the door shut. Your hands shake as you bolt it. Then you sit, just sit, for a long time. You run your fingers over your face, your arms, your sides, checking for swelling, for heat. You lean over a chipped bowl and spit, clear for now, but you keep checking, over and over, like maybe repetition will stop the inevitable. And this is the cruelest part, the waiting. Because the plague doesn't always come screaming in. Sometimes it drips into your life slowly. First a cough, then a spot, then a fever that rises and won't break. You've seen it. Everyone has. You've seen people walk to the well in the morning and be buried by sunset. And now, all you can do is wait. In desperation, you take out the charm again. The one from the priest. You whisper the same prayer he muttered. Something about mercy, deliverance, healing. You don't even know what half the Latin means, but you say it anyway, louder this time. Quirky fact, some people believed writing sacred words on parchment and swallowing them with wine could protect them from plague. Literal holy scripture inside the belly. You consider it. You don't have parchment, but you still have the wine. It's mostly vinegar at this point. But who's picky during a pandemic? You stay indoors all day. You don't eat much, just chew on a bit of dry root Maud once gave you for cleansing the blood. Tastes like tree bark dipped in regret, but it keeps your mind busy. You listen to the bell, to the coughing, to the way silence folds in around you like a heavy blanket. As night falls, you hear the 2 tolls, the cart. You peek through the wooden slats in your shutter and see them, moving slowly through the village. 2 men in hoods, one pushing the cart, the other dragging a body wrapped in cloth. They don't knock, they don't speak, they just keep walking, pausing every so often to load another bundle of sorrow. There's a scholarly debate about how organised these death carts were. In some towns, they were government-appointed crews tasked with keeping the peace and preventing panic. In others, they were just desperate locals doing what they could to protect their neighbours. Either way, they were a symbol of both mercy and horror, helping to clear away the dead, but also reminding everyone just how many there were. You lie down that night with your door still bolted, your charm around your neck, your body tense as a drawn bowstring. You count your breaths, you sip your vinegar wine, You whisper prayers that feel more like bargaining. You're still not sick, not yet, but the chalk mark remains. You wake with the mark still on the door. It's a stupid thing to hope it would vanish overnight, but hope is the only thing you've got left that hasn't rotted. You stare at it through the crack beneath the shutter, that pale X smeared slightly at the edge, where morning dew's gotten to it. It's not a symbol of illness anymore. It's a curse, a sentence. You haven't coughed, you don't have a fever, but none of that matters once the mark is there. The village has made its decision. Still, the day passes without incident. No knock from the plague doctor, no hammering of boards across your door. People pass your home like it doesn't exist. You might as well be a ghost peeking out from a forgotten tomb. It's the loneliest kind of quarantine. No one to bring food, no one to light a candle, no one to even whisper prayers through the wall. You eat the last of your root soup and chew a bit of old barley until your jaw aches from the effort. In the afternoon, desperate for any distraction, you open the old leather-bound book left behind by your grandfather, a hand-copied medical guide from some forgotten monk. It's full of strange diagrams and illogical remedies, but at least it smells like something other than vinegar and dread. One page talks about diagnosing illness by examining the patient's urine. The section's even illustrated, complete with a cheerful-looking man holding up a bottle of golden fluid like it's a prize turnip. According to the text, you can diagnose over 20 conditions just by looking at urine colour, consistency and even smell. Clear and sweet, too much phlegm, cloudy with a red tinge, angry liver, black and tarry. You're probably already dead. And of course there's the part where the physician actually tastes the urine for final confirmation. You gently close the book and slide it back under your straw mat. You're not that desperate. Yet. Still. The practice is fascinating in a please don't do that kind of way. Uroscopy, as it's called, was one of the most common diagnostic tools in medieval medicine. Physicians often carried glass flasks on their belts so they could examine a patient's urine on the spot. It was even colour-coded. They used urine wheels, diagrams with painted samples to match against real ones, like the world's most unfortunate paint chart. Scholars still argue how much of this was guesswork, how much was observation, and how much was just medieval people trying really hard to pretend they understood kidneys. You wish you had a trained physician now. Not that it would make much difference, but it might be nice to hear someone mutter serious Latin while poking your ribs with a stick and asking if your dreams are humid. You're starting to forget what a real conversation sounds like. Even the crows outside aren't gossiping today. By evening, the bells toll again. 2 strikes, the cart. You don't look this time. You sit with your back to the shutter and press a cloth to your mouth, even though you're not coughing. Not yet, but there's a little tightness now in your chest. Or maybe it's your imagination. Maybe it's just hunger or anxiety. You've spent so long watching for symptoms that your body feels like a landmine. Every twitch a detonation waiting to happen. You start whispering your own diagnosis aloud just to hear your voice. Pulse steady, probably. Breath normal, shallow but normal. No swelling, no black patches, skin pale, but that's just how I am. Then you hold your hand in front of your face and count your breaths. 1, 2, 3, still breathing, still here. You light a stub of a candle and stare at the flickering flame. The wax pools at its base like it's melting away time. You remember hearing once that flame was a purifier. Some people believed burning a candle beside a sick person would either draw the illness into the light or scare it away. Others thought it simply showed the soul the way out. Comforting. As the night grows darker, your thoughts wander, maybe too far. You think about Maud, the healer. You haven't seen her since that birth went bad in the next village. Maybe she left, maybe she caught something, maybe she's out there, lying on a cold floor with her own charm around her neck, waiting for the candles to burn out. You think about Edwin too. Is he alive? Did the stump stay clean? You hope so, even if hope feels useless now. You'd visit him, but even if you dared, no one would let you near. Not with the mark on your door. And then, as you're drifting between half-sleep and fever dreams, you hear it. Scratching. Not rats, not crows, something bigger. You sit up, blood surging in your ears. It's outside, at the wall. A shuffling sound, then a cough. Your heart stops. You hold your breath and press your ear to the wall. The coughing continues, wet, miserable, and close. Then a whisper. Please. You know that voice. It's Alric, the carpenter's son. Young, always running through the square with scraped knees and no shoes. Now he's leaning against your wall, begging for help. But you can't move. You want to. Every part of you screams to open the door, to lift him up, to wipe his face and say it's going to be okay. But the mark is on your door for a reason. The sickness is out there. You're supposed to stay sealed inside, for your sake, for his. The scratching fades. The coughing stumbles away. The sound of feet dragging through the dirt. Then nothing. You sit back down in the dark and realise your hands are shaking. You're not sure if it's because of what you did or what you didn't. Here's a grim truth. Medieval quarantine was brutal. Once you were marked, you were expected to stay put until you died or miraculously recovered. Towns enforced it with fear, with shaming, sometimes even with boards and nails. There was no system of care, no food delivery, no friendly check-in from healthcare workers. Just isolation and rumours. You curl beneath your blanket, cold now despite the warmth of the room, and press your fingers to your chest. That tightness, it's still there. But your skin is dry, your breath is steady. You're okay, for now. But that cough, it's out there. And maybe tomorrow it will be inside. You make it through the night without fever. That's the good news. The bad news is your throat feels like you swallowed a pine cone and your limbs ache, like you've spent the last week wrestling livestock. Maybe it's just the damp, maybe it's stress, but every twinge now feels suspicious, every yawn edged with dread. You've become hypersensitive to your own biology. A sneeze is a threat, a muscle spasm, a prophecy. The mark's still on your door, fainter thanks to yesterday's rain, but still visible, like a curse etched in chalk. No one's visited, no one's even walked by. It's like you've already died and no one told you. But this morning something changes. A knock. Not the hard hammering of officials or the eerie tap of the plague doctor. Just a gentle, hesitant knock. 3 taps and silence. You wait a long moment before cracking the shutter. There, standing a few paces from the door, is a girl. 12, maybe 13, freckled, hair tied back with a frayed ribbon. She's holding a cloth bundle, bread it looks like, and her eyes are wide with caution. "I'm not sick," she says, voice low. My mother said you'd need food." You don't know her. Probably someone's daughter from the far end of the village, where the streets are narrower and the roofs leak in winter. You hesitate, then slowly unbolt the door and open it just enough to reach out. She sets the bundle on the ground between you and backs away without another word. You murmur thanks. She nods and disappears down the lane. You carry the bundle inside like it's gold. Inside is a half loaf of dense rye, a chunk of hard cheese, and a dried apple that looks more fossil than fruit, but you could cry at the sight of it. You eat stolidly, savouring every bite like it's a banquet. The taste is stale, but divine. That little girl might have saved your life, or she might have brought you closer to death, there's no way to know. But right now, kindness feels like medicine, and in medieval Europe, sometimes it was the only kind you got. Later that afternoon, your neighbour appears at a safe distance across the road. You spot her through the shutter. Old Agnes, draped in her usual mismatched shawls, waving a crooked stick in your direction. You slide the window open just an inch. "They're saying you've been cursed," she says, matter of fact. "That your wound let in a devil." You blink. "What wound?" "The one in your head, of course, the hole. Demons slip in through holes, everyone knows that." You consider shouting back something rude, but honestly, you don't have the energy. And also, a small part of you wonders if she's right. After all, your dreams have gotten stranger, and you do sometimes wake with your mouth open, as if something had been trying to crawl out. Or medieval folks blamed everything on invisible forces. If it wasn't the stars or the air, it was demons. And where did demons live? Inside you, obviously. Lurking in the blood, the bile, the bone marrow, especially if you were melancholic or just inconvenient. Possession was the perfect explanation for everything from hallucinations to depression to chronic fatigue. Even now people whisper that those who survive the plague might carry a shadow with them, some remnant of what they'd seen or lost. In your village, people like Agnes are unofficial authorities on such things. Not a priest, not a healer, just someone with too much time, too many opinions, and a permanent front row seat to everyone else's business. She tells you she has a remedy. "I'll make you a charm," she says. "Stronger than the one the priest gave? Better. I'll bring it tomorrow." And then, because no medieval conversation is complete without something mildly alarming, she adds, "But I need a fingernail clipping, left hand." You stare. Agnes raises her brows. "It must come from you, else the charm binds to someone else." You say nothing. She shrugs and totters off. Maybe she's joking, maybe not. With Agnes, it could go either way. You watch her vanish down the lane and wonder if superstition is like medicine, useless until it works. That evening you boil some herbs Maud left behind in a satchel months ago. You don't know what half of them are. One smells like dirty socks, another burns your eyes just to sniff. But you throw them all in and let the mixture simmer over a small flame, steam curling up into the rafters. You sip the bitter broth and feel something. Warmth, at least. Placebo or not, it's the best you've felt in days. That night you dream. You're walking through the village, except the streets are empty. No chickens, no carts, no smoke from the chimneys, just silence. The doors are all marked with X's, but this time the marks are carved deep, scratched into the wood like claw marks. You hear someone whispering your name over and over, but when you turn, no one's there. You look down and your hands are black, charred, bones showing through the cracks. You try to scream, but your mouth is filled with ash. You wake with a gasp, drenched in sweat. Your candle has burned down to a stub, and the room smells like boiled weeds and bad decisions. You stumble to the shutter, throw it open, and blink. The mark is gone. You rush to the door, heart pounding, and swing it open. The chalk X has been wiped clean. Rain? Maybe. But it hasn't rained since yesterday. You look around, no one's there, just a quiet lane and the faint sound of wind through the trees. Your first thought is relief. Maybe the plague doctor cleared your name. Maybe someone finally decided you weren't a threat. But then a second thought slips in, darker, colder. What if the mark wasn't removed because you're safe, but because it's already too late? The next morning you step outside like a prisoner testing freedom. No coughing fit, no fever flush, and no sign of Agnes or her fingernail-based magic charms. So that's a win. The air feels oddly clear, like the sky is holding its breath. The birds are quieter, if they're even out at all. You run your fingers along the spot where the chalk mark used to be, half expecting it to rise back out of the wood under your touch like a ghost bruise. But it's gone. Clean. Too clean. You head to the well for the first time in days, clutching your bucket like it's your passport to normalcy. On the way you pass 3 empty houses, shutters sealed tight, windows boarded from the inside. You don't even wonder what's become of the people who lived there. You already know. Their names are barely whispers now. Nobody says goodbye anymore. They just vanish. At the well, there's a line. Not a long one, and people keep a cautious distance from each other. But it's still a rare congregation. A kind of community check-in. If you're standing, you're surviving. A woman with a kerchief covering her nose clutches a bundle of herbs to her chest. A boy stands with red eyes and an empty bucket, swaying on his feet. He's too young to be alone, but you don't ask questions. You don't want the answers. As you wait your turn, you hear muttering. 2 men are talking by the cart path, one older, with a cloak that's seen better years, the other with a cross dangling from his neck that seems more ornamental than holy. They're whispering about a theory, and because you're desperate for anything that isn't coughing or silence, you listen. "It's in the air," the old one says, eyes darting like a nervous squirrel. "The wind brings it. Comes down from the north with the mists." The younger man shakes his head. "No, it's the Jews. They poison the wells." You freeze. There it is again. The blaming. The fear turned into accusation. The scapegoat of the century. The rumour of poisoned wells has already reached your village, it seems. You'd heard it from a passing trader months ago. Claims that across the Rhine, whole communities of Jews were being rounded up, accused of infecting the water, tortured until they confessed, and then executed or burned alive. Whole Jewish quarters have been wiped out, not by plague, but by people with pitchforks and boiling blood. It's not new. In every crisis, someone has to be the monster. In times of pestilence, logic dies first. Bacteria aren't visible, so people hunt what they can see. Outsiders, minorities, healers, even the widows who look too calm. Anything unusual becomes dangerous. Anything different becomes criminal. You watch as the 2 men split up. One heads toward the chapel, the other toward the well, and you feel something heavy settle in your stomach. It's not sickness, it's dread. This village isn't just sick in the body, it's sick in the mind now too. You draw your water in silence, avoiding eye contact, and hurry back home. Along the way, you pass a scrap of parchment nailed to the message board in the square. It's smeared and damp, but the words are still legible. Beware of the foreigner, beware of the whisperer. The pestilence follows those who hide secrets. You tear it down. You don't know why. Maybe because it's stupid, maybe because it's dangerous. Maybe because it sounds just close enough to the kind of thing people might start believing if they're scared enough, which they are. That evening, Agnes returns. She stands at the edge of your path like some kind of woodcut from a very judgmental manuscript, holding something in her gnarled hand. It's the charm. You forgot all about it. "I made it anyway," she says. "Didn't need your nail after all. Found one on a comb you dropped months ago." You're disturbed but not surprised. She tosses it toward you, a small bag made of felt, tied with twine, lumpy and warm from her palm. You hesitate before picking it up. "Put it above your door," she says. "It'll keep the plague away, or bring you luck. Depends on how I tied the knot." You raise a brow. "Only joking," she adds, which somehow makes it worse. There's some truth to what she's doing. Charms and talismans were common tools of folk medicine, little bundles filled with herbs, bones, stones, or even hair, all blessed with whispered phrases passed down for generations. Scholars still debate whether this was placebo, community theatre, or something more psychological, a way to feel control when everything else was chaos. You hang the charm above your door, not because you believe in it, but because it feels like the only thing you can do. That night the fever finally comes. It creeps up your spine like a thief. You're not even sure when it starts, just that your skin turns slick, your mouth dry, your vision flickers like candlelight in a breeze. Your thoughts unravel. You see shapes in the dark that don't move when you blink. You whisper the Lord's Prayer, mess up the middle and start again. In your dream, the village is on fire. People are running, but there's no sound. The flames are blue, the birds are screaming. The plague doctor stands in the centre of it all, mask lifted, and beneath it there's no face, just a mirror. You wake gasping. The fever's real now. Your sheets are damp, your breath is shallow, and there's a lump under your arm. It could be anything. A bruise, a pulled muscle, or it could be the beginning of the end. You touch it again. It's warm, it's tender, it's growing. You lie back, staring at the ceiling. The charm above your door sways gently in the night breeze. The village is asleep, or dying, or both. And now you wait. You don't remember falling asleep, but you wake as if yanked upward by invisible hands, heart hammering and skin drenched. The fever hasn't broken. It's stronger now, thick in your limbs, clinging like wet wool. Your thoughts smear around the edges. You try to sit up and immediately regret it. Your stomach lurches, and the lump under your arm pulses like a second heart. Hot, angry, alive. You shuffle toward your bucket of water, drink, gag, drink again. The world tilts sideways. Your fingers tremble as you press them against the swelling. It's the size of a walnut now and climbing. You let out a noise you didn't know was in you, somewhere between a laugh and a sob. So this is it. The moment you've feared through leeches, drills and saws. No more speculation, no more scratching at imaginary symptoms, no more hoping. You've got the plague. You think about screaming, or running, or praying so hard your voice cracks and the walls come down. But instead, you slump into the corner like a rag doll and stare at the door, waiting for a knock that probably won't come. Who's left to check on you anyway? Agnes, the plague doctor, the girl with the bread? If they're still alive, they're smarter than to come here now. The worst part isn't even the pain. Not yet. It's the knowing, the certainty curling up inside you like a parasite. This was always where it would end. Not on a battlefield, not in a church, but here, alone in a crooked wooden room that smells like boiled herbs and rot, clutching your own side like you're trying to hold your body together by force of will. Still, you try to act. You brew a mixture of dried rosemary, thyme, and something else from Maud's bag that may have once been a mushroom. The water turns dark, sludgy. You drink it, immediately regret it. It's bitter enough to peel paint. But if it helps, if it does anything, you'll drink it again. You remember what they say, sweat it out. Wrap yourself in wool, stay warm, let the fever burn the illness out like fire, driving rats from a barn. So you layer on every cloth you own. You curl up and bake yourself in it until the heat is unbearable and your skin feels like parchment. Hours pass like centuries. Time loses shape. You're not sure if it's day or night anymore. Just light, dark, then light again. The swelling spreads to your neck. It hurts to breathe now. Every inhale feels like a promise you can't keep. You cough once. It tastes like copper. There's a moment, just a flicker, where you consider going outside, running to the square, arms out, begging for help or forgiveness or mercy. But what would that even mean? No one could help you. No one would. and all you do is bring the sickness with you like a torch in a dry field. Instead, you write. You find a bit of old parchment, dip a splinter of wood in wine and scrawl a few lines. A message. Not a will, there's nothing to leave, but something, anything. You write your name, you write, I tried. You write, I wasn't ready. Then the hallucinations start. The walls ripple, the ceiling breathes, shadows in the corners stretch and coil like vines. You see faces in the wood grain, laughing, grimacing, mouthing things you can't hear. Your fever dreams twist history and memory together until you're not sure what's real. You see the barber-surgeon holding his saw like a scepter. You see Maud chanting over a pot of steaming guts. You see the priest tapping your forehead with a cross made of bone. Then you see yourself, younger, healthier, running through the village without pain in your joints or fire in your blood. You cry, but the tears come out hot and sting your cheeks. You curl tighter. The floor presses against your side like a cold grave. Here's a historical curiosity. Some sufferers of the plague would become delirious within a day of the first visible swelling. They'd stagger into the streets, laughing or screaming, tearing at their clothes or confessing sins they never committed. Townsfolk called it the Black Fright, not just because of the disease, but because of what it turned people into, ghosts before death ever claimed them. There's scholarly debate on whether this was purely the fever, or if some cases were a form of mass hysteria. Trauma-induced madness from seeing too much, losing too much, too fast. But in the moment, theory doesn't matter. The line between body and mind is gone. You're only pain now. Pain, sweat, and the thin thread of thought that says, maybe you'll wake up better. You don't know how long you're under. A day, 2. The fever breaks suddenly, like a wave crashing against a rotten wall. You wake up drenched, shivering. Your body's wrung out like a wet rag. You can barely move, but you can breathe. The lump under your arm, still there, but softer, less inflamed. You survived the night. That simple fact sits in your chest like a stone. You lived. Maybe only for now, maybe only for a little longer. But you lived. You crawl to the door, drag yourself up against it and listen. No coughing, no footsteps, no bell tolling. You open the shutter. The sky's pale. Quiet. A few birds. A single dog trotting down the lane, ribs visible, tongue lolling. Life still moving, even if just barely. You think of the charm above your door, of the foul broth, of the way your body fought without your permission. You don't know what saved you. You don't know if you're truly safe, but you are still here. And that might be enough for tonight. By some small miracle or accident, you wake the next morning not dead. Still weak, yes. Still sore, absolutely. But alive. The fever hasn't returned. Your skin no longer feels like fire-drenched parchment. The lump beneath your arm, once swollen and angry, has receded slightly. It's tender, but not searing. You can breathe without wheezing. For the first time in days, your own body doesn't feel like an executioner sharpening its blade. And yet, you don't trust any of it. Not yet. You sit by the window for hours, wrapped in the only blanket that hasn't been soiled by sweat or fear, and stare at the village beyond. It's quieter than you remember. Not empty exactly, just slow, suspended, like someone pressed pause on the world and forgot to hit play again. A few people move between houses, faces wrapped in cloth, steps hurried. You spot the plague doctor, his silhouette drifting like smoke across the lane, cloak swaying, beaked mask fixed on the horizon, as if he can see something coming that the rest of you can't. You're not sure when it happens, but at some point in the morning you start to hope. Not with confidence, not loudly, just quietly into the back of your mind. Like the way one might hope for a warm meal or the end of a storm. You survive the fever, you can eat, drink, you're not coughing, not shaking, your body hurts, but not in a dying kind of way. More like a recovering from being horribly abused by God and nature kind of way. That's progress, right? Still, you need to be sure. You decide to walk. You dress slowly, each movement careful and deliberate. Your limbs feel like they have been stuffed with wet sand, but you manage. Your legs carry you out the door barely and into the light. The sun feels strange against your skin, too bright, too real. You squint at it like someone seeing fire for the first time. Your knees wobble, and for a moment, the world sways, but you steady yourself on the doorway and breathe. Then you hear it. A bell, but not the plague bell. Not the cart, Not the single toll that means stay inside or join the pile. This is different, sharper, higher. A chime, not a dirge. You follow the sound. It's coming from the chapel, the doors are open, and a few villagers have gathered inside, spaced apart, masks and scarves covering faces, candles lit along the aisles. It's not a mass. It's not even a prayer circle. It's a healing service. Or something trying very hard to be one. The priest stands at the front, hands outstretched, face pale beneath his cowl. He's offering the royal touch, a tradition as old as nonsense itself, the belief that kings, and sometimes priests, in their absence, could heal with a single touch, especially scrofula. The king's evil, a disease of the lymph nodes that left the neck swollen and grotesque. Not the plague, of course, but hey, when your body's broken and your mind is spiralling, you'll take anything. You watch as villagers step forward one by one. The priest murmurs Latin over each, makes the sign of the cross, and places a gloved hand against their foreheads. Some bow, others weep. One woman, face streaked with tears and snot, kneels and clutches the priest's robes until he gently peels her away like old bark. You don't step forward. You can't. Something about it feels hollow, like watching someone blow kisses into a storm. The real healing happened in your cottage, alone, with boiled weeds and sweat and sheer stubbornness. But you sit for a while, letting the candlelight flicker across your still swollen fingers, and think about what it would mean to believe in something enough to feel it working. Quirky fact. In France and England, monarchs performed the royal touch for centuries, even into the 18th century. Some historians believe the placebo effect made it occasionally effective, while others argue it was pure propaganda, an attempt to reinforce the divine right of kings through staged miracles. In truth, the touch probably cured as much as it killed. That is, not at all. You leave before the ceremony ends and wander slowly toward the edge of the village, past the abandoned cottages, past the little shrine someone's built of broken spoons and flower petals, past the place where Edwin lived, though the shutters are still nailed shut and the air smells faintly of vinegar and death. Then, just as you are about to turn back, you see her. The girl. The one who brought you the bread. She's sitting under a tree, face pale but upright, hands busy with a bit of weaving. You stop, unsure what to say. She notices you and grins, wide and gap-toothed. "You're not dead," she says. You manage a laugh, or something close to it. "Neither are you." "I saw the mark gone," she adds. "Told my mum, she didn't believe me." "How are you feeling?" She shrugs. "Tired. But that's normal, isn't it?" You nod. You don't ask if she's had a fever, or if she's hiding swelling beneath that threadbare shawl. You both know the rules. If she's sick, she'll lie. If she's not, she'll lie anyway. Honesty gets you locked inside with your own coffin waiting. She hands you a small bundle wrapped in cloth. "It's not much," she says. "Just some dried plums and a bit of goat cheese. My mum says you still look like a walking corpse." Charming. Better than a lying one. You thank her. She waves, stands, and vanishes down the path like a leaf on wind. You sit beneath the tree a while longer, chewing one of the plums, your body sore but functional. The cheese is hard, but it tastes like something earned. There's a strange calm that settles over you then, a recognition that you may not be cured, not truly, but you're no longer teetering on the edge. You've stepped back, just a little, enough. You walk home as the sun begins to dip behind the trees. Your legs ache, but they carry you. Your skin itches with heat, but it doesn't boil. Your breath is shallow, but it comes. Above your door, the charm still sways gently in the wind. You leave it there. The following day arrives cloaked in mist, the kind that rolls in from the fields and slips beneath doorways like a stray dog. You sit by the window, wrapped in a patched cloak that smells faintly of garlic and mildew, sipping thin broth and trying to ignore the soreness lingering under your arm. The swelling's no worse. That's something. You've learned to measure time now in gradients of pain. If it's not sharper than yesterday, it's a victory. The village is quieter than ever. A bad sign. People don't shout anymore. There are no bells today, but also no birds, no carts, no dogs barking at wind. You get the sense that everyone's holding their breath, as though the plague is an old blind god that might pass over if no one moves too loudly. Then, like a storm behind your ribs, you hear the crying. It's coming from the far end of the village, where the chapel stands with its stone spine jutting up against the sky. You limp down the path slowly, each step more effort than it ought to be, until you reach the source of the sound. A woman, thin as a twig, clutches her child in the doorway of the chapel. The boy isn't moving. His skin is grey-blue, his eyes closed, one arm dangling like an empty sleeve. The priest stands nearby, awkward, unsure. Few villagers gather, whispering behind veils and scarves. No one touches the woman. No one steps closer. You watch as the priest, after a moment of hesitation, begins murmuring a prayer over the child, his hands hovering just above the small body but never making contact. You feel something break inside you. Not a big dramatic shatter, more like a hairline crack running the length of your bones. The mother isn't hysterical. She just rocks back and forth, humming a lullaby between sobs. You recognise the tune. Your own mother used to sing it when you were feverish and too weak to open your eyes. That memory strikes like lightning, quick and hot and gone just as fast. And then you hear it, one word whispered too loudly to be an accident. Possessed. Someone says it again. It wasn't the plague, he was touched. Your gut clenches, here it comes. The crowd thickens a little as more people creep from doorways, drawn by curiosity or dread, or both. The whispers turn into murmurs, the murmurs into muttered theory. Someone mentioned strange behaviour. Someone else recalls the boy's recent nightmares. He'd been screaming at night, claiming he saw the shadow man in the corner. His fever didn't follow the usual pattern. No swellings, just seizures. That's all it takes. A priest alone can't declare someone possessed. That's a decision for a bishop or higher. But in villages like yours, distance from ecclesiastical authority means the rules are more suggestion than law. If enough people believe someone is possessed, it becomes reality. You watch as the murmurs build into action. Someone grabs a candle. Someone else fetches a crucifix too large for one person to carry easily. The priest protests. Softly. Ineffectually. You see it on his face, he doesn't want this. But he also won't stop it. You could step in, you could say something, but you don't. Because there's a terrible part of you that understands why they're doing it. When medicine fails, when the prayers stop working, when poultices and charms and bloodletting do nothing but empty people of their strength, people start turning to the invisible enemies. Demons, spirits, sin. The only way to fight those, ritual, fire, force. You've heard about what they do during an exorcism. Not the quiet kind with Latin murmured over a shaking body. The other kind, the desperate kind. They start with cold water, then binding, then beatings, not out of cruelty, but because they believe it might work. That pain might drive the spirit out, that violence might cleanse the soul, that it never ends well. Quirky fact, in some parts of Europe, folk exorcisms included burying the afflicted person up to the neck in consecrated earth for days. Others were forced to drink holy oil or had iron crosses pressed to their skin until it blistered. It was rarely sanctioned by the church, but when panic reigned, no one waited for permission. There's a scholarly argument about the link between possession and mental illness in the medieval period. Some believe that possessed individuals were suffering from epilepsy, schizophrenia or trauma. Others think it was a kind of social contagion. One case of screaming at shadows would spread through a fearful population like a second plague. You walk away before the ritual starts. You can't bear to see what they'll do to the child's body, dead or not. It feels wrong, a last indignity he hasn't earned. But your legs carry you home as if they've decided not to include you in the decision. Back inside, you bolt the door and sink to the floor. You press your back to the wood and let the tears come. You thought you were past this. You survived. You made it through the fever. But survival in this place is a cruel joke. It means watching others die. It means witnessing neighbours turn into inquisitors. It means having your humanity scraped away layer by layer until you're just a pair of eyes watching things you can't stop. That night you sit by your candle with the charm in your lap. You consider burning it. You consider crafting a stronger one, maybe with your own hair, your own blood. You're not even sure you disbelieve in demons anymore. You've seen too much, and not all of it was the plague. You sleep curled up by the door like a guard dog, not to keep someone out, but to keep yourself from going back out into that world. In your dreams, the boy walks past your window. He doesn't knock. He just looks in, eyes empty, and opens his mouth. Nothing comes out. Medieval childbirth was a coin toss, or rather, a dice roll with half the faces reading death. There were no safe hospitals, no antiseptic instruments, no epidurals. The mother might be lucky to have a skilled midwife, or she might be stuck with a neighbour who once saw a goat give birth and called it training. If things went well, it was messy, loud and terrifying. If things went poorly, well, they buried 2 bodies instead of 1. You grip her hand as she bears down, her face twisting into something beyond pain. The crowd recedes as they realise they're of no help. Good. You don't want witnesses if this turns into a disaster. You've seen people scream with fever, sob through amputations, even grin through trepanning. But nothing quite prepares you for the raw, unrelenting animal strength of a woman giving birth. You do what Maud once showed you, fumbling through memory like a broken playbook. You gather rags. You prop her knees with folded cloth. You talk, though your voice is shaking. You say things like, almost there and just breathe, even though neither of those are probably true. And then slowly, frighteningly slowly, the crown appears. The baby's head is emerging. You feel your heart trip over itself. This could be the beginning, or the end. You've heard stories of babies stuck halfway, of cords wrapped like snakes, of mothers torn from within. But you keep going. You don't have the luxury of fear, not anymore. One push, then another. You guide the head, then the shoulders, and finally, in a wet, horrible slide, the baby slips out into your hands. It's silent. For one frozen breath of eternity, you think the worst. That she's gone through all this for nothing. That you're about to tell her the child she carried through sickness, starvation, and plague didn't make it. Then it wails. A single shrill, glorious scream that cuts through the village like sunlight through mist. The mother gasps, eyes rolling back with relief. You hold the baby up, shaky, stunned, and then lay it gently on her chest. A boy, small, purple and squirming, alive. You don't cry, but you could. Your knees give out beneath you and you sit in the dirt beside her, your hands covered in blood and birth and hope. People begin to edge closer again, cautiously. A few offer cloth, food, even whispered prayers. Someone hands you a knife, dull, but it'll work. You tie off the cord with clean twine and cut. The mother strokes the baby's back with trembling fingers. Her face is damp, her hair matted, but there's a softness now, peace, however temporary. A villager murmurs, God's hand was on her. You want to say, no, that was me, covered in panic and guessing. But you don't. You just nod and smile like a blessed idiot. You help carry her into a nearby cottage, placing her gently on a bed while others bring water and warm cloths. She's drifting off already, one arm wrapped around her son like he's the only reason her heart's still beating. Afterward, you stumble home in a daze, wiping your hands on a scrap of linen that will probably never come clean again. You sit in the doorway, legs stretched, eyes on the sky. The clouds hang low and pink in the late afternoon light. Somewhere nearby, a rooster crows like it's morning, confused or defiant. And for the first time in what feels like forever, you feel something solid. Not joy exactly, but purpose. You were there, you helped. You didn't heal with herbs or bloodletting or charms, but with presence, with hands and courage and sheer stupid stubbornness. You think of Maud, of the hundreds of women before you who crouched beside blood-soaked straw and coaxed life from pain. It wasn't science. It wasn't always faith. Sometimes it was just a person being brave for someone who couldn't. Here's a curious historical note. Some midwives in medieval times were revered, trusted more than priests or physicians. Others were hunted, accused of witchcraft when things went wrong. The line was razor thin. If the mother and child survived, it was a miracle. If they died, well, then it was a curse. There's a long, winding debate about whether midwifery was empowered women's work or tolerated necessity. What's not debated is this. It was dangerous, sacred, and mostly invisible in the official records. Just like so many things that mattered. You wash your hands, eat what's left of your plums, and settle by the hearth. Your body aches in every joint, and you're sure there's still some kind of infection plotting its next move inside your lymph nodes, but for now, you won. The charm above your door still hangs, a bit darker from the humidity. You glance at it and offer a nod. Not out of belief, out of respect. It's earned that much. That night you sleep, no dreams, no shadows, just quiet. And in the morning a baby cries somewhere down the lane. The baby cries again the next morning, just as the sun peeks over the ridge of the thatched rooftops. It's distant but piercing, sharp enough to cut through your sleep like a blade drawn slow across parchment. For a brief second your heart stutters, unsure if you're hearing the sound in real time, or if it's some leftover fragment from a dream. But no, it's real. He's alive. and so is she. You roll to your side with a groan, bones crackling, and let yourself enjoy the feeling of not being feverish. It's a new sort of victory. Your limbs ache, yes, your joints still whine like rusty hinges, and you probably smell like a damp root cellar. But you're conscious, breathing, and not actively leaking from anywhere alarming. It's a miracle in the context of recent events. After a small breakfast, if chewing on a piece of stale bread and pretending it's stew counts as breakfast, you set out. The air smells of smoke and cold earth, with a hint of something more floral, maybe marigold. Someone's trying to bring spring back, or at least trick the gods into thinking it's already arrived. You don't go far before you're stopped by a red-faced man with a cough so wet it practically drips from his words. He's pacing outside his hut, mumbling to himself and scratching at a rash blooming across his neck. When he sees you, he grips your wrist hard enough to make your pulse skip. "It burns," he says, "like fire under the skin. She gave me something for it, but now she's gone, and I've got this." He pulls down the collar of his tunic to reveal a patch of red sores, glistening, cracked, and vaguely circular. Your stomach does a backflip. You're no expert, but that's not plague, that's something else. He stares at you, breath sharp with vinegar and desperation. "You've been to Maud's, haven't you? You have some of her things?" "You do, actually. A bundle of old herbs, a few dried roots, a pouch of powder that smells like rotten peppermint." You nod. He nearly weeps with relief. Sexually transmitted diseases aren't exactly a dinner table topic in your village, but you've heard enough hushed gossip to piece together what's going on. They call it the French disease in some places, or the gift from Naples. Here, they call it the rot, and everyone pretends it doesn't exist until their genitals turn purple and their brain starts melting. You promise to bring him something, though you're not entirely sure what. As you walk away, you wonder what Maud would have given him. A poultice? A tincture? A beating with a broomstick and a stern lecture about not sticking his bits where the sun doesn't shine. Back home, you root through the last of her ingredients. There's something labelled foxglove, which you vaguely remember being described as helpful but don't lick it, and another marked with a sketch of what looks like a severed finger. You opt for the safe-looking stuff. You mix a paste of vinegar, crushed garlic, a pinch of dried rosemary, and something black and sticky that might be tree sap. It smells awful, which feels promising. When you return to the man's cottage, he's sitting on the floor, shirt off, mumbling nonsense. The rash has spread across his shoulders. You smear the mixture on his skin, trying not to gag. He winces but says nothing. Afterward, you give him a cloth soaked in wine and leave him to marinate. There's no way to know if it'll help. Some treatments worked by chance. Others worked because the patient had enough immune strength to recover no matter what was slathered on them. Still, the belief in a cure could be half the battle. Maybe that's all you've given him. Hope, wrapped in garlic and desperation. By midday, you're called again, this time to a house near the chapel. A man sits on a stool, clutching his groin and whimpering like a kicked dog. His wife stands behind him, arms crossed, not exactly sympathetic. She meets your eyes with a look that says, "He deserved this." You say nothing. The man claims to have fallen on a shovel, which is the medieval equivalent of saying, "I tripped and broke my nose on a doorknob." You apply more of your dubious paste, then hand the rest over in a small crock. His wife thanks you. He doesn't. You make your way back home, wondering when you became the town's go-to expert on painful groins. You set the empty bowl down, rinse your hands, and realise you've started to smell like vinegar permanently. You light a bit of dried sage and wave it around, though it does little more than mask one bad smell with another. Here's a fringe fact. Some medieval doctors believed that wrapping a man's privates in crushed roses and goat fat could calm the passions and cure burning when peeing. Others recommended avoiding baths entirely, claiming heat worsened the disease. And in more affluent cities, mercury was the treatment of choice, rubbed directly into the skin or horrifyingly inserted elsewhere. Mercury, as in poison, but shiny, so medicine. There's still debate among scholars about how syphilis, or whatever medieval variation of it was circulating, spread so rapidly. Some say it mutated during wars carried across Europe by soldiers. Others claim it was imported from the New World, part of the deadly exchange that followed conquest. What's agreed on is this. People were terrified, ashamed, and largely clueless. And the treatments? They often killed faster than the disease itself. You spend the rest of the afternoon drying herbs near your hearth, whispering guesses about what Maud might have done. You miss her now, fiercely. Her calm, her sarcasm, her alarming comfort with animal parts. She would have known what to do. She wouldn't have panicked. That night, you rest your head on a bundle of cloth, the fire crackling gently beside you. Your hands are stained brown and green, and your back aches from crouching over other people's misfortunes. But you fall asleep fast, and for once you dream of something strange and kind. A field of sage, a sky full of stars, and the sound of laughter, yours, echoing across the hills. It feels humiliating even now, but everyone's been through it. If you're lucky, your sample gets held up to the light, sniffed politely and deemed well-balanced. If you're unlucky, it becomes the centerpiece of someone's day, a subject of intense scrutiny involving charts, prayers, and possibly a riddle or two. You screw the lid on tight, hand it to the boy, and follow him across the village with a growing sense of regret. The physician's hut is tucked behind the chapel, near the overgrown edge of the graveyard. A fitting place for medicine, really, equidistant between hope and failure. You haven't seen the physician since the early days of your illness, back when he was still reading from his dusty texts and muttering about bile. You're not sure if he even noticed that you survived, or if you were quietly written off and forgotten, like an unpaid debt. You step inside his hut and immediately gag. The room smells like boiled cabbage, rancid honey, and something sharp and metallic that might be blood, or is probably both. Shelves line the walls, clustered with vials of cloudy liquid and dried specimens in jars, some labelled, many not. A small furnace burns in the corner, warming a kettle that hisses menacingly. The physician, thin and stooped with robes that might have once been white, turns as you enter, and nods with the solemnity of a bishop preparing for confession. "Sit," he says. You do, on a stool that creaks ominously beneath you. He takes your pot like it's a holy relic, turning it gently in the candlelight. Then from a pouch he produces a small circular chart, the urine wheel. 12 little wedges of painted colour, each representing a different shade of doom. He holds your pot beside it, squints and murmurs. Pale, slightly cloudy, hints of green. You open your mouth to object, but he raises a finger. This indicates a weakening of the spleen and an excess of cold humours. Could be the aftermath of plague. Could be residual melancholy. Could be recent exposure to lecherous thoughts. You blink. What? He shrugs. The body is a mirror of the soul. Even lust leaves a stain. You consider arguing, but then he leans down, unstoppers the pot, and God help you, sniffs it deeply. Then again, you try not to gag. He nods, pleased. No sweetness, no rot. You are recovering. He jots this down in a small book filled with cramped Latin script and the occasional crude sketch of an ear or foot. I prescribe fennel root, twice daily, to restore digestive harmony, and eel liver if you can find it. Dried, powdered. You nod, slowly. I'll look into that. He closes the book with finality, then fixes you with a pointed stare. You're among the lucky ones. The sickness touched you but did not take you. Your body must now be recalibrated, purged of imbalance, no meat on Thursdays, no vinegar. Avoid overly warm thoughts. You're not sure what that means, and you don't want to ask. As he waves you off, you realise he's already forgotten your name. You walk out into the sunlight feeling like you've just left a particularly surreal sermon. Still, the visit gives you something you didn't have before, a diagnosis. Not a real one, perhaps, but something official, something to write down, to whisper to others if they ask, which they probably won't. Back at home, you sip water and chew on a bit of dried fennel root you miraculously still had tucked in Maud's leftover stash. It tastes like wet hay with a hint of soap, but at least it doesn't scream poison. You toss another bundle of herbs onto the fire and let the scent fill the room. Lavender and chamomile, mostly. It's not medicine, not really, but it smells like peace, and that's close enough. By mid-afternoon, a knock comes. It's not the plague doctor, not the priest, it's Agnes, again, with a sack over one shoulder and a glint in her eye like she's about to hand you either a treasure or a trap. Possibly both. "Brought you something," she says, and pulls out a small leather pouch. "Charms for dreams. Heard you've been waking up in cold sweats." You hadn't told anyone that. You hadn't told her that. She shrugs. "The crows see things. They told me." Right, the crows. Inside the pouch are dried rosemary sprigs, a sliver of candle wax, and, curiously, a feather. You hang it near your bed that night, not because you believe in it, but because at this point you'll try anything. Then you do something truly medieval. You boil your urine. Not because the physician said to, but because Maud once mentioned that when you boil a patient's urine, the sediment reveals everything. Excess heat, bile levels, and the overall mood of the body. You watch it simmer, squinting at the flecks as they swirl. It tells you nothing, but still you feel oddly satisfied. Here's the bizarre historical truth. Uroscopy dominated medieval diagnostics for centuries. Physicians were trained to interpret smell, taste, texture, even the way bubbles clung to the surface. Some urine flasks were passed along through couriers so experts in other towns could offer their opinions, sort of like an unpleasant version of medical consulting by mail. The urine wheel too was gospel. Colour matched to diagnosis, yellow for liver heat, milky for phlegmatic imbalance, black for imminent death. That last one didn't need a follow-up. You dump the boiled sample out your window into the mud. Someone shouts at you from down the lane. You ignore them. That evening, as the sun melts into the hills, you sit by your window sipping wine that tastes like regret and consider your fortune. You lived. You're healing. You're apparently not possessed or morally compromised via lustful thoughts. And your urine, as far as anyone can tell, is average. For the first time in weeks, that's enough. You go to bed early, the dream charm swaying gently above you. And as you drift off, you feel something strange. Something impossible. Rest. You wake slowly, not jolted by fever or scratching or screams, but by the sound of a rooster who clearly thinks he owns the place. The sunlight is soft, yellowed, filtered through the grime on your window, and for once your body doesn't feel like it's made of wet bricks. You stretch carefully. Nothing burns, nothing swells. Even your bones, which have been creaking like church pews during confession, seem to have quieted. This must be what passing for well looks like now. Not joyous, not vibrant, just not awful. You take it. After washing your face with lukewarm water and chewing on a dried plum so shriveled it practically disappears between your teeth, you decide to take a walk. You haven't wandered the village in days, not properly. Most of your time has been spent hiding, healing, or hauling someone else's misery around in a pot. But today, something stirs, a need to see what's still standing. You pass by the baker's, once filled with the smell of burnt flour and sourdough too ambitious for its own good. Now the shutters are closed, ivy climbing the walls like fingers trying to pry it apart. A bundle of dried flowers hangs on the door, a local tradition for warding off death, though it looks more decorative than defensive now. Down the road you pass the forge. The blacksmith is outside, sleeves rolled to the elbow, hammer in one hand, a child in the other. Not his child, you realise, too small. He must be watching her for someone else, if someone else is still around. She's got soot on her cheeks and is holding a horseshoe like it's a crown. You wave. They don't wave back, but the child smiles, and then you reach the house. The one you've been avoiding is not boarded up anymore. The door is open, creaking gently in the breeze, and the smell that rolls out is a mixture of old sweat, burnt cloth, and bitter herbs. You step inside. You're not sure why. Maybe because no one else will, maybe because you need to see it. It's Edwin's house. The last you heard, he survived the amputation, but that was days ago. In this village, days can be years. You call his name gently, your voice hoarse in the quiet. There's no answer, just the fluttering of linen strips hanging from the rafters, drying or swaying, maybe both. Then you hear it. A scraping sound, metal against wood. You follow it to the back room and find him sitting upright on a low stool, carving a piece of wood with the same stubborn look he always had, even when his leg was halfway to gangrene. He looks up, pale but alive. "Took you long enough," he says, and that's it. No tears, no hugs, just that. You sit beside him. For a while neither of you speaks. He offers you a strip of dried meat, and you chew it slowly while he works, whittling the piece of wood into what might be a spoon, or a very ugly bird. "I've been using the blacksmith's forge," he says. "Told him I'd trade work for food. I make nails, crude ones, but still." You nod. "How's the leg?" He taps the stump. "Itches sometimes. Hurts when it rains. Doesn't kill me yet." You glance at his face. There's something different now. Not just the weight loss or the weariness, something behind his eyes. He's seen the edge, touched it, maybe even leaned over. "I dreamed I still had it," he says quietly. "The leg. I was running, not even running anywhere important. Just fast. You want to say something comforting, something that doesn't sound like pity wrapped in a ribbon, but nothing comes. So you hand him the charm that Agnes gave you last week, the one meant for dreams. You haven't needed it lately. He might. He takes it, surprised, and tucks it into his shirt without another word. There's a silence after that, but see, it's not uncomfortable. Just two people remembering how to be human again. You leave before dusk, stepping over puddles that have gathered in ruts carved by old cartwheels. The world still smells of dirt and smoke, but there's something else in the air now, something you haven't noticed in a long time. Hope! You stop at the square on your way home. There's a small gathering, 5, maybe 6 people. They're watching something, standing in a tight circle. You edge closer and see the carpenter's boy, the same one who was sick just days ago, juggling 3 apples with a grin wide enough to split his face in 2. The crowd laughs your laughter. The kind that sounds surprised to be alive. It's disjointed and breathy and beautiful. You find yourself smiling not because the juggling is good, it's awful, but because the people watching have remembered how to smile. A priest stands at the edge, hands clasped. Not the old one, the young one from the next village over, sent to observe and support. He's barely 20, still trying to grow a beard, and he nods at you like you're both co-conspirators in some cosmic joke. You nod back. Later that night, back at your cottage, you build a small fire and sit by it, legs crossed, watching the flames flicker like drunk ghosts. You boil a few herbs, not because you need to, but because the smell's comforting. Chamomile, mint, a pinch of lavender Maud left behind. You drink it slowly, cradling the cup like something sacred. Here's a strange but true historical tidbit. In many villages, blacksmiths doubled as bone setters. Their knowledge of joints, tools and torque made them the go-to for setting breaks and pulling dislocated shoulders. Some even delivered babies in a pinch. Everyone was something else back then, carpenters with a side hustle in dentistry, shepherds who could stitch a wound, monks who brewed beer and removed tumours in the same afternoon. Survival didn't ask for credentials, it asked for guts. As you blow out your candle and settle beneath your scratchy wool blanket, you think of everything your body has been through. Bloodletting, fever, boils, screams in the night, sawdust and salt water, charms and pea jars and garlic pastes, and you're still here. You close your eyes. Tomorrow someone might come to you asking for a cure again, or for food, or just for a hand. You'll give what you can, because now, somehow, you're part of the reason this place keeps moving. You rise before dawn, stirred not by noise or nightmares this time, but by instinct, something ancient and buried deep, the sort of pull that wakes farmers to tend their crops or monks to light the morning candles. The fire's long gone out, leaving the room chilled and damp, and your blanket smells like sleep and stale herbs. But your body feels lighter today. There's less ache in your joints, and the soreness in your jaw, probably from clenching through every fear known to man, is starting to fade. Outside, the mist hugs the earth in soft, cottony folds. The village is muffled, still sleeping, its crooked rooftops poking out from the fog like shipwrecked masts. You tie on your cloak, scuff into your worn boots, and step out into the hush. It's quiet in a way that doesn't feel ominous. Just resting. You head toward the eastern edge of the village, where the woods begin to lean in close, the trees growing tall and private. There's an old herbal patch there, one of Maud's favourite foraging spots. She called it her living shelf, a place where wild things offered up their secrets. You're hoping to find thyme, maybe nettles, maybe answers. Your hands brush against the dew-damp leaves as you walk, pulling handfuls of chickweed and wood sorrel, their bitter green scent clinging to your fingers. You find a patch of feverfew, still surviving despite the season, and a few struggling stalks of angelica. It feels like collecting fragments of a life someone else left behind. When you stand, your knees crack so loudly it's practically a conversation. You chuckle softly, and the sound feels foreign in your mouth. You've gone days without real laughter. Smiles, sure, sarcasm, plenty. But laughter, that's been hibernating. You spot a figure up the path, a shape moving through the mist like something from a fable. You tense, but as it comes closer, you see it's the young priest. Again. He's carrying a bundle of cloth, his face pink from the cold, beard still failing to appear. "Peace," he says gently. "Just walking." "Same," you reply, holding up your herbs like proof of innocence. He smiles. "I've been trying to count the graves." Your breath catches. Such a strange, blunt thing to say. "What?" I lost count at 57, he says, and those are just the ones with markers. You don't ask why he's doing it. You already know. When death comes that quickly, in waves, people don't get remembered properly. Graves are dug, names are forgotten. Counting becomes an act of mercy, of memory. You walk together for a while, not speaking. The path curves through the trees, and the ground grows softer, spongier underfoot. The air smells like turned earth and moss. After a time, the priest says, "You know, some towns believe the earth remembers." You glance over. "The dead change it," he explains. "That if enough people die on one patch of soil, it holds the grief, like a stain." You look down at the ground beneath your feet. It looks the same as ever. Just dirt, just dirt. But maybe that's the point. There's debate among historians, has been for centuries, about how communities process mass death. Some records say people grew numb. Others say they turned to religious ecstasy, building shrines and dancing through the streets in penance. Some buried their dead with rituals. Others dumped them in pits, too overwhelmed to do more. But everyone remembered, even if they didn't say it aloud. Eventually, the priest veers off toward the chapel, muttering something about Vespers. You continue walking until the sun's higher and the mist begins to melt away, revealing the village in pieces, one house at a time, like someone pulling back a curtain. You see smoke rising from a few chimneys now. The smell of bread, weak but real, drifts on the breeze. A child runs by in a blur of rags, shouting nonsense at a rooster who seems thoroughly unimpressed. A girl with braids stands on a stool washing a window that's more hole than glass. People are still here, still trying. You head to the edge of the burial field next. It's not a cemetery, not officially. Just a sloped patch of land behind the village where crosses have sprouted like wild plants. Some are crooked, others beautifully carved. Most are just sticks tied together with twine. You walk between them slowly, reading what names you can. Some are fresh, the dirt's still dark and soft. Others have already faded. The grass reclaiming the space as if to say, "Rest now, you've done enough." One grave has no name, just a child's rag doll sitting at its foot. You kneel beside it, unsure why. You don't pray, you just sit, breathe, let the silence fill your lungs. After a while you leave a small bundle of thyme on the mound. Not because you think it means anything, but because doing something still feels better than doing nothing. On the way home you pass Agnes. She's stirring something in a pot over an outdoor fire, her expression grim. She doesn't say hello, just jerks her chin toward the pot. "What is it?" you ask. "Rat soup," she replies. "Well, it was a rat." You raise a brow. "We're out of meat," she mutters, "but the bones make good broth, better than nothing. Besides, you boil it enough, everything tastes like onion." You don't argue. You help her strain the pot, add a few herbs from your bag, and sit beside her while it simmers. The fire crackles, and the wind shifts, carrying the scent of rosemary and, yes, definitely rat. You eat in silence, and it's not terrible. Not good, but not terrible. Quirky fact, in times of famine or plague, people would eat anything that couldn't outrun them. Rats, cats, dogs, shoe leather boiled to softness. The term four-legged fowl became a euphemism for rat in some markets, and roasted sparrows were once considered delicacies, when the supply of actual birds hadn't been scared off by dying people coughing in every alley. By the time you return home, the sky is pale again. Clouds brushed across it like ash. You sit in your doorway with a steaming cup of whatever's left in the bottom of the pot and stare at the horizon. You're tired. Not the kind of tired you can sleep off. The kind that settles in your bones like dust. But you've earned it. You get up, light your single candle, and hang the dream charm over your bed again. You don't expect it to work, but you like the way it sways when the wind moves through the cracks in the wall. It's something to look at besides darkness. You lie down, still clothed, still slightly rat-scented, and let the day unwind from your body. Tomorrow someone else might need help, and you'll go, because you're part of this place now, part of the stain and part of the healing. You wake to the sound of arguing, not the hushed, fearful whispers you've gotten used to, but loud, throaty, full-throated shouting. The kind of noise that makes birds scatter and neighbours suddenly find something urgent to do elsewhere. You're already at the door before your mind fully wakes up, half wrapped in a wool blanket and still tasting last night's rat soup in your mouth. Down the lane just past the chapel a crowd has gathered. You see hands waving. A man in the middle is red-faced and stomping like a child denied a treat. You approach slowly, cautious. The village doesn't often gather like this unless someone's about to die or someone's body has been found after everyone assumed they already had. It's Thomas, the tanner, at the centre of the storm. He's shouting at the young priest, jabbing a finger at him like he's trying to poke holes in scripture itself. "You buried them too close to the well," he roars. "They said not to. They said if you bury the sick too close to the water, the miasma gets in." You frown. Miasma. The old belief that disease spread through bad air, corrupted by filth or decay. It's not entirely wrong, not entirely right, but in villages like yours, it might as well be gospel. People hang herbs at their doors, burn rosemary in their hearths, all to purify the air. And water? Sacred. Contaminating it is almost unthinkable. The priest, to his credit, isn't backing down. "The ground is shallow here," he says evenly. "We couldn't dig deeper without risking collapse, and we didn't have time." Thomas isn't moved. "My daughter's sick now. Sick! And she drank from that well." The crowd murmurs. That's the real problem, you realise. Not the graves, not the priest's decision. It's fear. People need somewhere to pin it, a place to unload the crushing weight of helplessness. You glance around, faces tight with worry, a few people backing away slowly from Thomas, as though fear itself might be catching. Someone whispers the word curse. You step forward before your brain fully agrees. "Then stop using the well," you say, loud enough to carry. "Boil your water. Use the stream. There's rain coming." Thomas glares at you. "And who made you the healer now?" You shrug. "I lived." It's not smug, just fact. And the crowd, oddly enough, seems to accept it. The tension softens slightly. The priest exhales, just once, and nods his thanks. Thomas huffs and stomps away, muttering about bringing back the old priest, the one who died, you recall, 3 weeks ago, choking on his own lungs. As the crowd disperses, the priest lingers. "I didn't have a choice," he says quietly, eyes fixed on a patch of gravel near his feet. "We had 6 bodies in one night. We were digging with broken spades. I know the risks." You nod. "You made the best choice with the worst options." He offers a weak smile. "Aren't all our choices like that now?" You don't answer, because yes, they are. Afterward, you walk to the well. Not because you need water, but because you want to see. The ground nearby is still disturbed, raw dirt showing through grass. A few wilted flowers sit atop one of the newer mounds. You draw a small bucket, sniff the water, taste it. It's cold, clean, enough. But you wouldn't trust it either. You bring it home anyway, boil it just to be sure. It's strange how ordinary things become luxuries. Clean water, a steady fire, a roof that doesn't leak. You sit by the hearth, sipping boiled well water like it's fine wine, and listen to the quiet shuffle of life beyond your walls. Around midday the sky darkens. Not storm dark, but heavy. Thick clouds rolling in from the east, low and wide like an avalanche in slow motion. You hear the distant sound of thunder, soft but real. Rain's coming. Everyone in the village knows it before a single drop falls. You can tell by the way people start moving, bringing in laundry, covering wood piles, herding animals into shelter. Agnes knocks, completely soaked, grinning like a lunatic. "It's coming down in the next hour," she says. "Want to help me catch some?" You do. You rig up buckets, pots, anything you can find with a bottom and hope. Agnes climbs onto her roof and sets up a sloped piece of slate to guide water into an old cider barrel. You hold the ladder, yelling at her every 30 seconds to be careful. She yells back that if she falls, at least the ground's muddy. The first drops hit like whispers, then more, then a slow, steady patter. You stand in it, face upturned, letting it soak into your hair, your shirt, your bones. You haven't felt rain in weeks. It's cold and clean and real. The storm lasts most of the evening. The thunder stays far away, just a murmur on the horizon. The rain doesn't flood, doesn't break anything. It just cleans. You light a fire, hang your clothes near it, and sit wrapped in a towel that smells like wood smoke and something vaguely sour. You add a pinch of dried rose hips to your boiled water. It doesn't help much, but it makes you feel like you're participating in civilization. Quirky historical fact. Some medieval doctors believed that rain during plague years was healing, provided it hadn't touched the bodies of the dead. Others claimed it was cursed, especially if it came with thunder. which was said to be the sound of angels smiting the unworthy. Still others saw it as a cleansing, God rinsing his hands of the whole mess. You lean against the window as the rain tapers off, watching rivulets stream down the glass like melted lead. Somewhere nearby, a woman sings softly to a baby, not a lullaby, a hymn. You don't know the words, but it moves through the village like smoke. When the rain ends, the world is quieter than before. You dry your hair with a cloth, light the last stub of your candle, and crawl into bed. The dream charm sways once more. You don't dream of sickness tonight. You dream of wells brimming with clean water, of graves covered in wildflowers, of storm clouds that bring only rain. You wake to the smell of wet earth and fresh bread. For a long moment, you think you're dreaming, your brain conjuring impossible comfort after too many nights of brackish water and rat broth. But then you hear it. A knock, light, polite, and unmistakably real. You groan, stretch, and wrap a cloak around your shoulders, still damp from yesterday's rain. The morning air is sharp, the kind that clears your sinuses and makes your teeth ache. Outside, the world is glistening. Puddles pool in the worn grooves of the road. Thatched roofs drip quietly. The sky is washed of smoke and soot, a pale silver that almost feels kind. At your doorstep stands a boy. Not the urine courier this time, but one with a wild mop of curls and the shy posture of someone told to deliver something important, but not to stick around for questions. He holds out a bundle wrapped in clean cloth. No explanation, just a nod, and then he's gone. You carry it inside, cautious. Bread. Still warm. Coarse but fresh. Someone out there has flour again. Someone decided to bake. Maybe even to share. It's the most hopeful thing you've held in weeks. You slice it thick, spread it with the last smear of goat cheese Agnes dropped off 2 days ago, and eat slowly. Every bite feels like a promise that things might return. Not to normal. Normal's been buried with the rest, but to possible. Later that morning, word spreads through the village like fire in a dry field. A merchant cart has arrived. You leave your cottage quickly, heart skipping like you're a child again, running to the square on festival days. And there it is, plain as day. A wooden cart hitched to a pair of tired-looking horses, creaking under the weight of crates and sacks. The man at the reins is wrapped in so many layers of cloth he looks like a well-dressed scarecrow. He has bells tied to his boots and a mask looped around his neck, which he pulls up when anyone comes too close. The crowd keeps its distance. No one's foolish enough to press in like they used to, but there's a buzz, low, curious. The cart is open, the goods visible: salt, vinegar, cloth, onions, potatoes, dried fish, and soap that smells faintly of honey. A spool of thread in red. You haven't seen colour like that in months. The merchant raises both hands and speaks through the mask, muffled but firm. Clean coin only or barter. No food taken in trade. You join the cautious line that forms, your small pouch of coins clutched tightly in your pocket. You have almost nothing to offer. 2 copper bits, a pewter pin, and a dried sprig of marjoram you suspect he won't care about. But still, you stand there. Not for what you need, necessarily. Just to feel what it's like to stand in a line again. To hope again. The woman in front of you trades a pair of rabbit pelts for a tin pot. The man behind you argues over a bottle of oil. When it's your turn, the merchant eyes your sad little offering, then shrugs and hands you a bar of soap and a tiny cloth satchel of salt. You nod. No words exchanged, no need. Quirky, historical detail. Travelling merchants during plague outbreaks often tied bells to their boots or cloaks, not just to warn of their approach, but to signal they were still alive. Some even carried written charters declaring them plague-free, signed by local lords or church officials, though everyone suspected they were forged. And in many towns, merchants had to throw goods across a barrier or leave them for a full day before anyone would touch them. The fear of contagion turned simple trade into theatre. You walk home with your treasures wrapped in a piece of clean linen the merchant gave you as a kindness. You almost weep at the feel of it, soft, unfrayed at the edges, the colour of cream instead of old ash. That afternoon, the village hums in a different tone, lighter. Even the air smells different, earthy, yes, but tinged with the scent of garlic and fresh lye. Someone has opened windows, someone is singing. You can't quite make out the words, but the tune is familiar. A work song, something with rhythm. Your foot taps along without you realising. Children play in the square again, not tag and not close enough to touch, but a game involving sticks and distance. They laugh. It's a rusty sound, but not unwelcome. You decide to make something with your salt. It's such a small thing, but the flavour of it changes everything. You stew a handful of barley in water with a sliver of dried onion, and when you taste it, the salt explodes on your tongue. You sit on your doorstep with the bowl steaming in your hands and feel, for the first time in what feels like years, human. Evening falls slow, like honey dripping off a spoon. The clouds part just enough to show a sliver of sun before it dips behind the trees. People light their hearths early, but tonight there's laughter leaking through the walls. Not much, just enough. You visit Edwin before the light fades. He's still working on wooden spoons and his collection has grown. Some look usable, some look like they're halfway to becoming kindling. You trade him the soap for one that almost resembles a ladle. He takes it with something like reverence. "No one's smelled clean in a month," he says. "You'll be a god." "Only if you don't drop it in the fire," you reply. He grins. That night, you light your hearth again, not because you're cold, but because you can. You soak your feet in warm water with a pinch of salt. You scrub your hands with the soap, which leathers thick and creamy. You smell like something approaching a bakery, and it makes you feel absurdly proud. You go to bed beneath clean linen. The dream charm sways. You think, just before sleep claims you, that if tomorrow's worse again, if the cough comes back or the rats chew through the barley, you'll still have had this day. One good day, one day where the world felt like it might be on the mend. Here's an odd fact. After plague waves, many communities were rebuilt not through kings or clergy, but through neighbours. Quiet exchanges, bartered soap, repaired fences, the kind of healing that doesn't get written down, but it's the kind that lasts. The next day arrives not with dread, but with birdsong. Not many birds, mind you, just one particularly scrappy-looking sparrow on your windowsill, pecking at nothing in particular and chirping like it owns the place. You stare at it from bed, half wrapped in your blanket, one eye barely open, and wonder what that sound used to mean. Spring? Renewal? A reason to get up. Eventually your stomach makes the decision for you. You rise, stretch, and wince slightly at a twinge in your hip. Nothing ominous, just the kind of ache that comes from sleeping on straw, carrying water, and surviving a plague with your joints intact but very annoyed about it. You dress slowly, layering against the morning chill, and tuck the wooden ladle you traded from Edwin into your satchel. You haven't used it yet. Today seems like a good day to try. Outside, the village is brighter, cleaner. You notice new herbs tied to doorposts, rosemary and sage mostly, their leaves crisp and silvery in the breeze. Someone's been teaching the children to make charms again. You see two of them skipping rope down the road, hair tied with scraps of green cloth, singing a rhyme that makes you smile and cringe in equal measure. Boil the rat and mash the ewe. Tie the cross with a nettle glue. If you cough, don't tell a soul. They'll throw you in the bellman's hole. Classic. You make your way to the community hearth near the chapel where a few villagers have gathered to cook communally. It's a custom that fell out of favour at the height of the sickness. Too risky, too close. But now, with fewer coughs and more people walking upright, the need for shared warmth and food has crept back in. Agnes is there, naturally, already elbow deep in a pot of something bubbling and brown. She waves you over with a ladle twice the size of her forearm and says, "If you want to keep that new spoon of yours, don't stir too deep. This pot's got a bottom that bites." You chuckle, pull out Edwin's ladle, and cautiously stir the edge of the pot. The smell that rises is hearty. Onion, root vegetables, something fatty and vaguely animal. Might be squirrel, might be pigeon, might be both. You don't ask. You ladle some into your own bowl and sit on a log by the fire. Steam curling into your face and warming your nose. It's moments like this where the shift becomes most obvious. A month ago, everyone moved like ghosts. Now, they talk. Not much, not loud, but enough. Someone laughs, someone else mentions repairing a roof, someone trades a length of string for half a loaf of bread. It's nothing really, but it's everything. The priest appears a little while later, leading a short procession of children holding flowers. You think it might be a feast day, though no one seems entirely sure which one. Half the calendar's been forgotten, buried in the chaos, but they process anyway. Small voices humming a hymn while the priest trails behind, looking exhausted but satisfied. Someone hands you a small bunch of daisies. No explanation. You accept them, tuck them behind your ear like a fool, and continue eating. Quirky historical side note. During and after plagues, processions like these were common. People paraded relics, sang hymns, even whipped themselves in public to atone for collective sin. In some places, the church encouraged it. In others, they outlawed it entirely, fearing it spread more than it soothed. But for villagers, it wasn't about doctrine. It was about doing something, moving, singing, holding on to life. After the stew, you help clean. It's not required, but your hands need something to do. You scrub bowls with moss and ash, rinse with boiled water, and line them on a plank to dry in the sun. Beside you, Agnes is arguing with a child over whether or not dirt counts as seasoning. Her position, it does, and you're lucky to have it. Later, you walk to Maud's old hut. You haven't been there since you first raided it for supplies. The door's still half off its hinges, and the smell inside is one of damp wood and long-dead herbs. But there's still power in the space, not magic, memory. You kneel beside her shelf, what's left of it, and run your fingers along the rows. Most of the jars are empty or broken. A few still have labels: comfrey, valerian, mugwort. You pocket the last usable bits, brush away dust, and pause at a small scrap of parchment nailed to the wall. It's Maud's writing, faded but legible. A list: plague, rue, wormwood, vinegar, prayers. Cough, horehound, honey, boiled nettles. Pain, poppy, poppy, poppy. For grief time, not time, time. You don't cry, but you sit there a long while. When you finally rise, you take a handful of dried wormwood and tuck it into your pouch. Then you pull the parchment down, fold it carefully, and slip it into your shirt. Outside, the light is warm and golden, the kind of glow that makes you think of endings and beginnings all at once. You return to your own little hut, tuck away the herbs, and decide it's the time to start sorting through the rest of Maud's things. You don't know what you'll do with it all, rebuild her practice perhaps, or share it with others, but it feels like a duty, a promise. There's a knock in the evening. A woman you've seen once or twice carrying a baby bundled so tightly it could be mistaken for a loaf of bread. She doesn't say much, just, "The cough started again, can you help?" You nod and you light the hearth, brew nettles, add honey, say nothing but let the steam work its magic. She drinks, the baby sleeps, she thanks you, and leaves you with a handful of dried apples as payment. As night falls, you sit beside the fire again, spooning the last of the stew from your bowl. Your stomach is full, your body aches from use, not illness, and your thoughts are tired but steady. You look around your little hut, smoke-stained, draughty, cluttered, and feel something unexpected settle into your chest. Peace. Not because everything is healed, but because something is growing again. Even here, you wake to silence. Not the eerie, suffocating kind that hovered during the worst of the plague, when even the birds seemed to hold their breath, but a peaceful quiet. A morning kind of silence, the kind that belongs to a world still stretching awake, waiting for footsteps and pots to clang and chickens to complain about the indignity of another day. The blankets slip down to your knees, your face cold, your toes warm from the last embers in the hearth. There's a faint scent of rosemary in the air from the sprigs you tossed onto the fire before sleeping. You sit up, roll your shoulders, and feel a dozen small aches announce themselves, like old friends who refuse to leave without one final hug. You move slower now, not from sickness, but from the rhythm of someone who knows each step is precious. You don't rush, you don't stumble, you rise with purpose. Outside, the road is quiet, but not abandoned. A boy runs past, chasing a dog that looks more fur than dog. A woman hangs linens that flap like banners. Smoke curls from rooftops, twisting into the pale blue sky like lazy prayers. You breathe in, no rot, no bile, just dew and chimney soot and fresh bread baking somewhere nearby. You've taken to checking on people in the mornings. It's not official, no one asked you, but it's become expected, trusted, part of your routine. Today you head toward the baker's hut, where she's kneading dough with flour traded from the merchant 3 days ago. She doesn't say much, but she presses a warm roll into your hand and nods. It's soft, fresh, and still steaming when you bite into it. Next, you visit the carpenter. His youngest scraped her arm chasing chickens into the ditch. You clean it with honey and wrapped it in cloth from Maud's old stock. The child doesn't cry, just stares at you like you're something rare. You probably are now. Your path takes you past the chapel where the priest is cleaning the steps with a broom so bent it might as well be decorative. He waves, you wave back. No words exchanged. just mutual acknowledgement that somehow absurdly you're both still here. You walk to the burial field. You do this sometimes when the noise inside your head gets too loud. The graves stretch across the slope like crooked teeth, wildflowers growing in places, moss creeping over names. Some markers have fallen, others were never there to begin with, but they remain, witnesses, reminders. You stand in silence for a moment, hand resting on one of the wooden crosses. You whisper a name you barely remember, someone's brother, or maybe uncle. He died coughing beside the hearth 2 months ago. You had brought him nettle tea and told him he'd be fine. He wasn't. But you said what you could. You speak a few more names, not prayers, just names. Just saying them. That's the truest medicine left now. You leave behind a sprig of rosemary and walk home. The afternoon is spent boiling herbs, restocking jars, writing small notes in a crude ledger you've begun. Maud's old system was mostly memory and muttering. Yours is organised chaos. Entries like, use for swelling, maybe gout, and don't eat this one again, bad dreams, possibly ghosts. You hear footsteps in the late afternoon. A familiar voice calls your name. Edwin. He hobbles into your hut, one crutch under his arm and the other in hand holding what looks like a basket. I caught something, he says proudly. You raise a brow. Fever? He snorts. Rabbit. He sets the basket down and lifts the lid. Sure enough, a rabbit. Small, lean, but alive and very offended to be here. Didn't want to kill it yet, he says. Figured you'd know how to fatten it up. You don't, but you nod. You'll figure it out. So now you have a rabbit. Another life to take care of. You set up a small pen out back with scrapwood, tuck a few carrot tops and cabbage leaves inside, and hope for the best. You name it Sir Scratch, partly as a joke, partly as insurance against eating it too quickly. You and Edwin sit outside and talk. The way people talk when they've run out of trauma and just want to remember what regular conversation feels like. He says he still dreams of running. You tell him you've stopped dreaming altogether, and somehow that makes him laugh. You used to be the sickest one here, he says. Now look at you, hosting wildlife, healing coughs, smelling like soup and rosemary. You shrug. I smell better than you. Fair. The sun dips low, brushing the tops of the houses in golden light. The village glows like something sacred, like something earned. Quirky historical note? In the aftermath of major plagues, communities often restructured. Women stepped into roles previously denied them. Healers, leaders, record keepers. Death created vacancies, and necessity didn't ask about gender. Some became respected midwives, some accused of sorcery, but all were part of the new order. The survivors, the ones who remembered. You think of Maud, of the priest, of Agnes and her rat soup, of the mother who handed you her baby with no more ceremony than a loaf of bread, of Edwin chasing rabbits with one leg and a bad attitude, of yourself standing on the other side of something no one can name without whispering. You go to bed with the sound of rain starting again. Soft, rhythmic, harmless. The charm sways above your head. You fall asleep with the windows open, listening. And in your dreams you walk through a garden filled with herbs that never rot, with people who never cough, where every grave is covered in thyme and daisies, and Maud is there, muttering about how you're storing the yarrow wrong. She's probably right. Tonight, the fire is low, just glowing coals now, the room bathed in a soft orange hush. You lie in bed, one arm tucked beneath your head, the other resting over your ribs where they rise and fall, slow and steady. The charm above you barely moves, the air so still it feels suspended, like the village itself is holding its breath in contentment, not fear. Outside, the trees creak gently. Somewhere a rooster starts crowing too early, as usual, because no one told him life is still piecing itself back together. You smile in the dark. That's all right. Let him crow. You think of the people you've helped, their faces like faded sketches in your memory. Some stayed, some didn't. But they passed through your hands, and that matters. You think of the herbs, the ledger, the rabbit now snoring in its crate like a furry gourd. You think of Edwin laughing, of Agnes stirring her cursed stew, of the priest sweeping the steps because what else can you do when the world insists on surviving? You made it. Through bloodletting, dreams full of boils, bad soap, worse bread, and urine that needed way too much attention, you made it. And you're still here. Still part of this wild, fragile, ridiculous little village. Still someone's healer. Still someone's hope. You close your eyes, the fire fading into whispers, and breathe out slow. Sleep comes easily tonight. You've earned that. Let the world keep turning outside and let the sparrow sing in the morning. Let someone else boil the next pot of stew. For now, there's nothing left to fix. There's only rest. And a sky full of stars above you that never stopped watching.